Welcome to the Image Critique Show with Jeff Johnson, Rick Avalos, and their special guest. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Jeff Johnson. My brother in arms here, Mr. Rick Avalos. Ricky, how are you this evening?
Rick Avalos here. I'm doing great, Jeff. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Rick and I have been around for a while. We'll just briefly tell you about that. For those of you who don't know us, not that you should know us, don't get me wrong. I mean, we both grew up in studios. Both our dads were very talented, highly decorated judges, speakers, the whole works. So we had good teachers. And I know from our conversations over the years that we do this program. We do this as a regular monthly program. I'll tell you about that in a moment. The idea is we have had the opportunity because of our fathers to learn from. Wouldn't it be interesting, Rick, to know how many different people that have been well known and very accomplished retirees, how many people of those we've learned from over the years?
Right.
It's got
Yeah.
to be easily in the dozens, if not more, the
Oh, yeah.
opportunity to learn
Oh, yeah.
different techniques, darkroom techniques, shooting indoor, outdoor, I mean, just everything. So our goal is to turn around and to provide those opportunities to folks. So we really thank you for joining us. Pat you on the back for wanting to learn. It's all about the camaraderie and the sharing and such and that. So this show kind of has come from that thought process. So it, in a sense, emulates an image competition, but we're not about the competition aspect of it. We're more about the learning and the experience of just being part of this. Rick, you want to tell them more about why we're doing this?
Yeah, you know that we've both, as Jeff mentioned, are beneficiaries of so many mentors. I mean, obviously, our dads are the number ones, but we've been the beneficiaries of so many wonderful mentors. And, it's at some point, gosh, Jeff is right at 50 years in this. I crossed that line in June. So we like to think that we have something to share. And, 99% of what we have to share, I feel confident in knowing that it's valuable and valid, not because we're uh, professing it, but
Important.
because we're passing on what was taught to us.
Right.
So that's really the source of pride for me is that and occasionally we'll refer to someone and I get a kick out of it because I always wonder when we do refer to if so-called old timers back in the day type thing, if our audience recognizes the name or
Or
the
just rolls their eyes.
yeah. But going back to, excuse me, yeah, Jeff and I have both experienced everything from, the large format to medium format to the tiny format into digital. We both are experienced in the darkroom. We had our in-house color processing and film was, like I say, all in-house, both black and white and color. And I have to be honest, I much preferred in the black and white darkroom. It,
Yeah.
it was just so therapeutic for
It's
me.
an experience, isn't it? That you
It
just can't,
certainly is.
nothing
And
else like it.
back in those days, and I guess you can pass that along to today's uh, generation of digital technology, but when you printed your own work back then, it made you a much better photographer because in the darkroom you said, "Oh man, I wish I'd have vignetted that a little bit more," because you could put a vignette in front of your lens back in those days. Now I'm going to have to burn in that corner or a color burn, and then cropping. But it's just those experiences that that I would hope everyone uh, could benefit from.
Well, there's actually obviously some very, very talented photographers that are younger and digital only have never touched film, and then that's phenomenal. And even some of us old timers have done a pretty good job at learning converting over to digital. But it's a totally different art to having more, gosh, what's the word? Obviously more hands-on,
Mhm.
but to just be in the process of the, and I'll use the word development. I don't necessarily mean it as far as developing film, but just in that whole process. Because now when you plug a card into your computer and there's the image, that's fantastic. And you can work on it, see the sliders and see it all happen. there's nothing like standing in the darkroom with the smell of chemicals that probably were killing us. Uh, and watching the image slowly come up on the paper and how the chill you get in your spine that, wow, look what I did. Look what's happening here. It's just almost like magic. And it was interesting because it was when you think back and now, if you make a mistake in digital, you don't like it, you can literally just throw it away or change the slide or throw the layer away.
Yeah.
You goof on a print in those days and you just wasted a piece of paper and you throw it away. And even
Right.
back in the 70s, those 8 by 10 pieces of paper were a couple bucks a piece, plus the
Right.
chemistry that only lasted for a few images. Anyways,
Yeah.
it was just such a totally different experience. It really was. I felt like it got more of the senses involved, and it was, more in the creative world. Absolutely nothing wrong with sitting at your computer and you can Photoshop, but to me, it always seems like it's just out of reach
Right.
when you have to stand there and are actually looking at it, um, and we can tell you stories, but we won't bother
Yeah.
you right now.
Yeah. And I'm reminded of some time ago that the Colorado Springs Guild invited Jeff and I to come and put on a kind of a walk down memory lane type thing. And we brought some old equipment. And if you've ever worked with or seen the film holders for the medium and large format, and I just got a kick out of it because I held up the holder, the film holder, and then I said, here's the compact flash card, the little card, and here's the non-compact flash card that we used to use. You just got a kick out of it, out of that whole. It brought back a lot of memories, but
Things have changed quite a bit, that's for sure.
boy, haven't they?
So that leads us to what we're doing today, and I think this is such a great opportunity. And of course, that's what we're all about. We've had a lot of great experiences with our dads and all their friends. If my dad didn't have an answer to a question, he knew somebody to call, and it was just a phenomenal network. And that's what we've been trying to really foster and to continue with. And that's where the show came from, is just to be able to offer, I'll say, our opinions, and while they're educated, they're not necessarily right. It's not about being right or wrong. It's about striking conversations and opening up things. So we're going to do some stuff to your images, and I say that in a way that people are going, "Wait, what?" We're going to try and be a real thorough and give you some feedback. But again, it's just our opinions. Right or wrong, don't even add that to it. That has nothing to do with it. It's just a couple of guys' opinions. Again, educated and maybe have some ideas to get you thinking in another direction, but that's the whole idea. So what we're doing tonight here, I've got 26 of your images of your gang, and I'll bring them up in Photoshop. Rick and I then, through the beauty of whatever the program around here, Zoom. We've got some tools that we can go in and circle some stuff and talk about things, and we can change cropping if we feel so. It's all about just suggesting different things. So don't panic. We're not there to destroy your image by any means. We just want to throw some ideas at you. But the other cool thing about this is that neither one of us are judging your competition, so it doesn't really matter if we know whose images are whose. I will just read the title when they come up. But by all means, open your chat box. If you have a question, feel free to ask it. Use the chat box if you would. Rick's going to be monitoring that while we're going. So if you have a question about your image, somebody else's image, about composite, whatever, please ask. That's what it's all about. And when we find the appropriate moment, he'll ask it to us and we'll chat about it a little bit. So we want
Right.
conversations. We want some feedback. We want you guys to be part of this too. So it's not just, we aren't here to say this is how it goes. We're here to engage with you and hopefully open up some ideas and so on and so forth. So,
Yeah.
what
And
else? What
I
else
like,
do you need to know about? Oh, yeah, go ahead, Ricky.
yeah, just wanted to add that the format that Jeff and I are using, we're not bound by any PPA regulations or anything like that. So it's really pretty loose. We might make comparisons. Those of you who are experienced competitors, you know that during the judging, there's none of that where you compare one image to another. But in this case, we might do that. And it's
Just
just
for education, yeah.
yeah, it's an educational thing so that hopefully the benefit, you'll see the benefit of that. So,
Yeah,
uh,
it's never meant to compare in terms of this guy's better than this guy. It's nothing
right,
like that. It's if there's an opportunity to say, well, here's the composition we're talking about. It worked well here, maybe not so much here, or whatever.
right,
You'll see. It's just kind of fun. And then hopefully and we also, the other thing I'll tell you is that we have a show that we do once a month, the fourth Thursday of each month. It's called the ImageCritiqueShow.com. It's free to watch. Please join the site, and right now there's no membership or anything. You can just join it. All of our past episodes from the last couple of years are up there if you care to watch. Again, the fourth Thursday of each month is our show. You're welcome to join in. You can, if you want to submit an image for our guest judges. Rob was a guest. Was that last year, Rob, or even longer ago than that? Um, and so we bring in someone else. So it'll be three of us chatting about image. So please, I welcome you to come in and learn more about that and get some ideas. And of course, go back and look at. We're also on YouTube as well. You can look at some past videos and such. Well, I had another thought that came up and now it's gone. What else do we need to tell them?
Um, you pretty much covered it because that's was the direction I was hoping we'd go to, is to invite all of you to sit in on our monthly. Oh, I did want to mention too that just a little bit of a pat on the back on our backs. We've been doing this for our own state for what, 2 years now, coming on 2 years.
Yeah.
And we're just getting a lot of positive feedback from our members who have maybe taken to heart some of the things that our guest and we have said, and have done really well in competition.
Oh yeah, we've got what, half a dozen new masters in the last couple
Right.
of years. And they're regulars on our show as submitting images. So
Which
we like
scares
to,
the jeebers out of me, so that when we have our state competition.
yeah, we don't, Rick and I don't win awards anymore. Everybody's gotten so good that we're like, wait, what? All right. So if you guys are all ready to, and you're here, so that's good, you're ready. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to steal the screen. Art of the Steal. Rick, I'll let you start off with this one.
Yeah. Okay. Really tight capture, which I feel adds a lot of drama to the image. We're working in a situation with available light, so the capture, in my opinion, is handled well in terms of exposure. Now, depending on what category this is, if it's illustrative, then I would recommend going in and right in here, taking elements like that out of the image that are distracting, because in the center area here, obviously our eyes are going to go to the area of highest contrast, so we have that light, kind of a charcoal gray um, line against the black background, and kind of pulls our attention. Now, if it's in reportage, that's something we cannot do.
Right.
And then the other thing that I would recommend, one of the 12 elements is presentation. So I would recommend that we have some kind of a presentation with this image, whether, a nice matte base and then maybe a key line around the image. And I'm seeing a little bit of do you see it, Jeff, right up in the top left corner where our we have kind
Oh,
of
yeah.
so, we want maybe to have the full background black all the way, because, and a lot of the things that Jeff and I are going to talk about sound like, oh, are you kidding me? That's really nitpicking.
Yeah.
Man, that's what makes the difference, because one little element, two little elements, three little elements that seem inconsequential can be something really big. Should mention too that we can either take this out or tone it down quite a bit, this area here.
Right. And I think that's back to what Rick was saying. Depending on the category you're going to enter in, if you're going to do an unclassified or whatever other categories like that, you have the option to remove these things that he's talking about. Let me get a different color here. And that way it just makes it that much more um, striking to the judge to see the faces of the ball, this nice triangle through here that lets your eye wander through the scene. And this is, by the way, I think an awesome capture, the timing wise, because sometimes a split second earlier, they're looking for the ball, not bad. Another second after this, maybe the guy's got the ball and he's going down. But this shows action. This is absolutely wonderful timing here for a sports image. So really, really kudos to you on that one. So
Yeah.
yeah, and like he was saying, it really depends on what category you are putting it in, because if it is going to be the reportage, then this stuff has to stay. You can't remove it, but
Right.
you can still burn and dodge. You could lighten up eyeball just a little bit there. You could tone this part of the jersey down. Just little things like that, tone this down just a hair. And the idea there, of course, is then to bring the viewer's eye, the judge's eye, into this area of action. So that's kind of what
Yeah.
that's all about there.
Yeah, yeah. And these areas that we're talking about, as far as, let's say that it is illustrative and you can take those things out. Um, with this orientation, our brain is seeing it differently. And a little trick that we've used for years and years and years is if you turn the image upside down, then your brain is viewing it from a different perspective, and then these things generally will jump out at you just a little bit more.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys know that trick, but if you can easily just go to, and I've got my camera in the way here, so um sorry, that was a trying to
One,
go behind my camera here. So, oh geez, I'll get it. I got to move my camera so I can see the drop down menu. So yeah, so what he's saying basically is go down here. Wow.
think you got to go 180.
Oh, well, what's happening is I get to this point and then I look away from it and my camera's blocking it, so I'm guessing, and then I hit the wrong button. So sorry about that. Okay. So I don't know if you guys know this trick, but this is so huge because kind of the bottom line, the real simple terms, is it takes it out of your normal understanding of this image, the way you shot it, or even if it's not your image, and it starts letting you look at some things that will stand out more so. I do this in my landscape because that's pretty much what I do most of the time. And what are the pieces of the image that attract my attention first? Like Rick mentioned, this little reflection back here, the part of the, probably I don't know if it's goal post or stands or something, light post or something, and this little bit right here. And what catches my eye, and then is it necessary to the story? Again, the fine line there is if this is reportage, you have to leave those alone. But any other photograph, this little trick, flipping it upside down, lets you look at, okay, what is it I want my viewer to see first? And are there other things that are pulling their eye away from that perspective? So that little flip upside down like that is a big must, I think, in any type of photography, client work, snapshots, just personal work, especially competition, because you want to lead. And again, it's that, especially if you're doing points like you guys do, little things like this little bit of reflection here and this little bit of line standing, again, if it's in the right category, just can take away a point or here or two, especially if we're looking for trying to do well and get some trophies.
Yeah. I don't know what's up with this orientation. I don't know if that's a label on his jersey
Right here,
or
yeah,
yeah.
looks like it's a L right there for large.
Okay.
Yeah, but like again, so it's just little things like that. While it is appropriate to the scene, and again, if this is not going to be in the reportage category, yeah, I would eliminate that just to get that vision for the viewer, whoever the viewer is, back to what you want them to see.
Hmm.
Okay.
Nice capture.
Before the dust storm. I'm gonna enlarge this a little bit. So see, we'll just enlarge stuff just so we can look at it better. Whoops. I don't know how to use a scroll wheel on my mouse, apparently. All right. This is stunning. I mean, initially, and again, if you look at, oh, by the way, in the oh yeah, I'm sorry, Andrew. Andrew mentioned if we might give a possible score. Real quickly on that, especially in our show, we tend to stay away from scores. But if you want, we certainly can give you some rough idea of how maybe we would score it. And the reason for that is because we've heard so many times we will tell somebody, yeah, I think that would score 83, and then they enter in a competition and it gets a 78. They're mad because they don't
Yeah.
understand it. So if we talk about scores, and if you really want to, we'll give you some rough ideas of how we might score them. We're happy to do that, but just realize this is just one person's suggestion. So, but we don't do it so often. But Andrew, keep reminding me. I'm happy
Yeah.
to talk about it.
Yeah, and I think another point in addition to that that should be made is, on a panel, you're looking at five judges, and in this situation, there's two of us, and and what's interesting is that any two panels could be actually a category off.
Oh,
So,
easily, yeah. I've seen that happen a lot. Yeah.
yeah. So, um, That's just so you'll know where we're coming from.
And I mean, I personally had an image that I submitted at our state competition and it got a 91. And I was all excited and I entered it at the regional at the time. This was before they called it district. And I was excited because 91 and it got a 77 because five different judges, one judge viewed something in there that he didn't, for whatever reason, didn't think it was right or good or however you want to look at it. And it scored 77. I'm shocked. Well, thank goodness it ended up being in the loan collection or imaging excellence now as they call it. So it happens, but that's a huge, it's 20 some points different and it happens. We've seen it happen quite a bit. So we don't necessarily want to say, oh yeah, that's definitely a 92 and then you enter in competition and it gets an 82 because I mean, you guys know I'm preaching to the choir, but that's kind of why we stay away from it. But we can kind of give you an idea, maybe a category or a rough idea of where we think this might go,
Mhm.
as well. So, and Alan's saying she won't be mad, but
All
knowing
right.
how things may be dark would be helpful. And actually, that's a great point, Alan, because that's what we're trying to do is to try to mention things to you in these images that we feel could be done a little stronger or not necessary or things like that that could will help score higher. Like this image here. I love this. This is absolutely phenomenal. What a great story. The first thing that strikes me, the composition, I like that it's very full. It
Mhm.
gives me the idea that, and it doesn't matter how many horses are there in this picture or in the field that day, it just gives me this very intense, it's tense, it's strong, it's powerful. You can hear the hooves beating. Um, Intensity in their eyes as they're running. All those things are really helping for the initial, if you remember, number one on and it's put there, the elements of design is, um, what's the word, Rick? That's
Uh,
terrible.
Impact.
Impact, yeah. And I'm gonna turn that back over to you. Go ahead and tell me he's got a great story of how to remember impact.
Oh yeah. Um, I look at impact from two different perspectives, or in my head, there are two kinds of impact. One of them would be lasting impact, and the other one would be what I consider fleeting impact. So, lasting impact to me is that image that that it first comes up and you look at it and you have this wow, just like Jeff said when this one came up, wow, and then you continue to enjoy the image and you continue to enjoy the image and it's one of those images that gosh that really impressed me. Now fleeting impact, because every image has some degree of
Right,
impact.
right.
And it doesn't have to be, necessarily positive. It could be negative, and that impact that pulls at your emotions and your heartstrings. But the fleeting impact to me is, oh, that's really a great image, and you're enjoying it for a couple minutes, and you think in your head, okay, what's next?
Yeah,
Whereas with the lasting impact, you're thinking about that, and judges uh, experience that when after a state judging or a local that they're doing the awards judging. And I remember that one that we saw earlier, and it had the whole, the panel with the horses. I want to see that one again. So that to me would be lasting impact. Now, with regard to this image, this definitely has impact, and I agree with you, Jeff, as far as the typed composition because it shows intensity. We can see the lifted hooves of the horses, so we've got some really strong action going on. But again, I would strongly recommend some kind of a presentation, a mat with a key line of some sort, and this would be a really nice um, uh, candidate for maybe some kind of uh, I don't know, a buff kind of a mat, maybe along this color here, and then a key line, the value of which might be two or three shades lighter. But yeah, and this would be something that would really look good as a 60-inch and some
exactly. Yeah,
little cabin. Yeah.
yeah. I'm kind of chuckling because the color of matte is such a, I don't even know what the right word is here, but you will have Rob knows what we're talking about. We've talked about this many times, where you'll pick something that matches and you'll enter it, and one judge will say, I probably would have gone lighter with that the next time, and then you change it to a lighter matte, and the next competition, a judge says, I might have gone with a darker matte. So there's not going to ever be
Yep.
the right answer there. The
Yeah.
bottom line with matte and stroke or beveled edge or all those things is to make it subtle. That's a secondary part of the image because we see so many mattes that come in that are bold with textures and patterns and beveled edges and strokes that are brightly colored and such. And if you see the matte in the presentation first, stop. It's
Yeah.
got to be secondary. It's got to be subtle for this competition. It might be great to actually have a matte like that to hang it on the wall, but presentation is important, has to happen, but it's got to be subtle and supportive and not take over the scene.
Yeah.
A couple of things I see in here, and this is just one of those, who knows, is this a digital situation, whatever. But I'm looking at some of the textures in on the horse's hides right here, and it's looking a little bit, yeah, like you did there. It's looking a little bit, I guess, for lack of better words, digitized. And it's just the things, just look at that and see what it is, what's going on. There's a phenomenon that happens. If folks will go in and start to paint an image and paint a little bit. And again, in competition is what I'm talking about. If you paint a little bit, you got to paint the whole image. You can't
Mm.
just paint parts of it. And it's got to, if you're going to paint it, you got to paint it so it looks like it. Um, so it's not a question for the judge. It's either it is or it isn't. So I'm kind of getting the feeling that this may be a technique or something could have been used to get a little bit of, or maybe it's just a smaller file that, and it's not, I'm really treading the line here because it's not a bad thing. It's just I only see it on a few areas, so that's going to question a judge. And it does look like back here, it does almost look like it's a maybe it was a smaller file that was enlarged too much, or it's those kind of things. So just look for those things and either make it more so, like you meant to do it, or blend those edges so they don't look like they almost look like they're splotchy. When you go too far with sharpening, it starts looking like a pencil or a chalk drawing. Again, cool technique. I love that, but you either need to make it be that way full-hearted or watch for some of those areas. And again, these are the kind of things that, no, we're not being a little nitpicky, but these are the little things that judges will pick up and knock a point off or two. And at the state level, when we're looking for trophies and best of categories and those kind of fun things, this is where you lose them because there's just little things like that. Overall, it's a phenomenal image. The color tones, so I love the warm earth tones. I'm seeing a little bit of some lines back in here that easily could be that same kind of thing. Like maybe it's just a little bit over enlarged.
Yep.
And we have Rachel entering the room. Welcome, Rachel. Thanks for coming out tonight. All right. Next image. Oops, gotta get rid of my tool here in order to close this off. It's the little routine I've had to get used to. All right. Next image we have is called Chorus of Hope. So right off the bat, first of all, I love flowers. I love macro or close-ups of flowers. So this really appeals to me. Also, just in how it's laid out, you've got this nice bunch in the foreground and then repetitive colors, more flowers in the background. So that helps create depth. It helps create movement in the scene. So we here obviously look at, that's our, and I use my little pen here. Here's our obvious uh, point of contact with the image of these flowers. And then as it's almost like a comfort thing in composition, when there's more flowers that are similar colors, shapes, even if they're smaller and not as identifiable, we know what those are. So it allows us to wander through the scene and come back and feel like it's like you're giving us permission to go from here to here and look around and come back. So that's a great thing in compositional conversation. Um, I love this whole area. The problem that I'm having with it a little bit is that it's very, very busy. And again, we remember we're talking about competition criteria, competition suggestions. This would be a beautiful poster, greeting card, gift, things like that, because it really is brings us into the deep woods there. The color harmony with the reds and the greens, the yellows and the orange golds, fantastic, well done. The composition is really strong. But there's an awful lot going on. We have the flowers with their patterns, we have the repetitions, and then we have these trees that again represent, they match this and they represent, so that's good, but then you've got the blue sky showing through and more shadows. So there's just so much going on there that it's so tense. It's very, very tense going through the whole view of that. Rick, what do you think?
Yes, I agree. And you pointed out as far as a calendar or card or something like that. And this area here would be an excellent area for copy, to if it
Yeah.
was that particular kind of application. Um, and I do like, we have a cluster of flowers down here at the bottom left, but let's say, and it forms almost one element because they're so close together. But what I liked about it is that, we have an odd number that's really standing out. So we have, one, two, three, four, five that are, the main elements of the image. So, odd numbers are a good thing to work with. I probably would consider taking this area, these little petals out, the flower out there. And again, oh, two more things. I think the lighting on this one is just a little flat. And evidence of that for me is on the trees. I don't see a real distinctive highlight and shadow side. So the lighting is just a little bit flat. And then, as we've talked about before, the presentation.
One more thing that I see, and this is what we were talking about in the last image, is that it looks like there has been some painting done, and actually it's very nice. It's very believable. It's very, and I can see the stroke work on the stems of the flowers, but I'm not really seeing a little bit here, but I'm not really seeing it on some of the petals. Again, competition wise, you'd need to beef up the stroke on the petals. I don't feel like there's any painting done in the middle of the flower, and I can promise you that this flower I can see there's been some stroke work done brushing it. I don't really feel it on these other large ones. So I can promise you that in a competition you'll have some, especially some of these judges who have experience, who do the painted and the compositing, things like that. And we've heard it too many times. They'll knock it down because um, not so much the style or the quantity, but that it needs to be an even amount of
Mm.
technique added. Because again, like these leaves are gorgeous over here. I mean, just that area alone is done very well and back in here. But again, I'm losing strokes in some of these petals here. They're a little bit there and that, but not enough to carry the technique through the whole scene. So, and then there's the other thing. As I look at this, let me just try something here. The other fun thing that we like to do here. Whoops, let me get rid of the tool. Um, Go for the crop tool here. Consider, just because this is the format of the camera doesn't mean that's how you have to leave it. Be open to trying some other things. This is about the flowers. Let's fill this up. Let's take that sky out of here. You still have the same elements in here. Now, maybe it's a little bit too much, but you've got the flowers are very strong, and you have some of the repetition of the other flowers back there that help tell the story. But maybe all these extra trees and the sky shooting through is not really necessarily helping benefit the story. So consider something like this of now you've really zeroed into what you want us to see and eliminating some of the things that keep pulling your eye. So if I was to do this, I'd go up here and I'd get rid of these little bits of blue that are popping through some of these light areas and even toning down this background just a hair more. So now the trees look more supportive and not standing out too much. So there's the difference. And again, another thought. Try it out and see. Play with it, and you might look at it and go, "What the hell are they talking about?" You never know.
Well, and I like to do what I call side by sides. Go
Yeah.
start with the original, and then experiment with the crop that Jeff was talking about, and the other nuances, and then do a side by side. And it doesn't hurt to have the side by side, and then, I mean, just ask a lay person. It could be your spouse, it could be a friend or whatever, and the side by sides, and because they don't have any skin in the game. They're
Right.
just which one is it that they prefer? A lot of times that's very helpful.
And then just be prepared that if you ask a loved one, they're going to say, "Oh, that's so beautiful. Thanks, but that didn't help."
Yeah,
Um,
and I that's my point too, is that just, the question is which one do you prefer?
yeah.
Then you get out of that uh, trap of that Jeff's talking about. Oh, it's so beautiful, but no, I just want to know which one you prefer.
Right. And again, the idea there too that Rick is really kind of referring to is that because we've known each other, what, 35 years now, and
Yeah.
we'll send each other images. And I'll fix an image up, and I think I'm doing a good job, and I like it, and I think this is going to do pretty well, and I'll send it to Rick. And he sends me back a punch list of 15 or 20 things that I should probably change to make it do better. So not that we're wrong, but we fall in love with our work, right? We
Yep.
love these images because we created it and it's beautiful. But getting that other perspective, and again, a lot of times getting another professional, a good friend who's going to be honest with you, that's huge because they might see something that you never thought of. It might be wrong, it might not be wrong, it might be better, it might not, but it's just giving you that other point of view.
Right.
That's kind of the whole reason that this show started. Okay, now we have closing in.
Oh yeah.
That's strong. Yeah, go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, it sure is. And again, depending on the category, if it's reportage, then we go with what we have. But man, there's really good dynamics to this image. Sometimes we think, well, we need a little more space to the right for this horse to ride into. But in my opinion, this is really good composition because
Yeah.
there's this tension, if you will, and this drama, of coming near the finishing line. Now, in terms of uh, technique, we've got the belly under here really going dark. If we can, work that area, really bright highlights, and the horses are, you know, sweaty and they're doing their thing, and I get that, but it just might be a touch on the contrasty side, but and really nice presentation. Now, I would like to talk too about key lines.
Yeah.
I don't feel that there's two types of key lines in my opinion. This one on the outside is what I would consider a detached key line, for obvious reasons. Then there's this one that's attached, okay? And then this one up here that's detached. And neither one is any better or worse than the other. But my point being, if we do use an attached key line like we have on the bottom, then um, let's make it a tonal value to where we can see it all the way around the image. Because at the bottom, we can see it fairly well. We can see it on the left side, but notice how we lose it almost entirely on the top part. So if we're going to use a key line that's attached, we want to use a color or a tonal value that separates the image from the mat. But in this case, I don't even think we need that attached key line. I think this detached is just fine,
Yeah.
and maybe coming in a pixel or two closer.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we hear a lot is when the de detached key line is too far out from the image, it's asking for more attention and
Mhm.
pulling the judge's eye away from the subject matter. And again, this sounds like we're splitting hairs, and frankly, we are. But again, this is why we're doing this show because these little things will help. So if this key line here, we're maybe even just in maybe not, maybe halfway to three-quarters of the way from what it is, it becomes a non-item. But the
Right.
minute there's more space here, and we had some people enter some in the show a couple months ago where the key lines were way out here, so it almost split the mat in half. That's asking for a lot of attention. So subtle is better. I like that you didn't go bright white. It's matching the color of the building back there. Um,
Mhm.
the other thing that I'll say, and again, it's just being one of those things that this looks like it's been sharpened. And I say that because, again, this is the stuff that judges pick up. There is a white border along the sleeve and the pants. There's a dark, a black outlining the helmets. And those, I know they're there, but sometimes when you over sharpen something, and I think that's kind of what's happened in why the the sweat, the reflection on the horse compared to the non-sweaty areas looks so stark because it's been over sharpened a little bit. And again, I'm just telling you what I think I feel. If I'm wrong, I apologize for you, but just go back and look at it because there's some things sometimes we sharpen things and you start getting like I'm seeing just a little bit of a black outline right there, and that's what happens when you sharpen subjects. I mean, it'll happen if you've ever done a landscape and you go to darken the sky and all of a sudden you have that white line along the mountains or the building or whatever's in the sky there. And that's kind of what happens. It's a natural phenomenon. So you haven't done anything wrong. It's just by changing this background. And I'm wondering if maybe either by darkening this wall back here or sharpening it just a little too much, it's brought out, and I see a black here. And again, yep, we'll admit it. We're being picky, but I'm going to tell you, judges will see these things and you'll lose some points on it. And
Right.
the one thing here, this black area, we refer to these as a black hole because there are some areas that are black with no detail, right? If you're familiar with the zone system, there's zone 0 is black with no detail. This window with black, that's acceptable because it's small and it's not asking for attention. This is large, it's in the middle of the scene or close to that. Again, we got black here, no detail, not a problem. But this is up front in the judge's face. What happens is the brain goes in there and saying, okay, what am I missing? What's here? And it's taking the viewer away from the subject that you're trying to get them to get all wow over. So whatever you can do to keep this from being a big black hole. And obviously don't make it too light so it becomes an obviously underexposed looking piece. But there's a happy medium that you can play with, or you can drop a texture in there and all those kind of fun things. All right, we've beaten this one up enough. Again, that's not the purpose. It was a joke.
Yeah, don't beat a live horse.
Yeah, I was kind of going there, but I didn't know if you got that one. All right. We now have uh color within the lines. Color within the lines. Wow.
Yeah.
Boy, I love this kind of stuff, the architectural stuff. I shoot a lot of this myself, and a lot of times I'll go black and white. Um, but a lot of times the balance is very, I don't want to say important, but if you don't get a good balance, it stands out and makes it work against it. But this is fantastic. The challenge you have is you have the windows on the right side of this area and not on the left. But again, the balance of the shapes, the curves of the architecture, and then where you've placed this and the support beams coming in, and then they follow the line, repetitive patterns. And that's why I have the tool, so I should use the repetitive patterns of the circular windows gives us comfort to go through the scene. All the lines pretty much are telling us here's kind of the focal point we want you to look in there. So I mean, this is very well done. Um, the color harmonies, again, you've chosen, I think the blue is a good choice in this map because it emulates the blue in the sky we're seeing through there. You've got a double key line. They're close enough, they're small enough, the colors are simple enough. I think it's okay. Again, I might move them in a little bit,
Yes.
minor
Yes.
thing, but what else do you want to add to this, Rick?
Yeah, the depth in the image is really handled well because we have this um, converging lines from the right and the left that take us into the image, and that's a very, very strong composition. And actually, uh, because of this V shape uh, lines, this vanishing point, it just supports the dome and the light coming through. Um, I do like the blue matte. I think I would take it down maybe to almost,
The
somewhere
deeper.
in here, a little heavier.
So here's something that I do during a show several times, so bear with me, but I always look at stuff like this and go, the colors, the harmony, all that's kind of good, but let's look at what black and white does and see if, let me go back to get rid of all the lines there real quick. And I do this a lot because sometimes, especially in an architectural thing, it's the patterns, the movement of the lines, the shapes and tones that make an even stronger image. And I don't know, either way, we can go back and forth on this. Let's see, where'd my history palette go here? Um,
Alan says she likes the black and white. Yeah.
Well, and that's just it. I always what I'm trying to do here in the show like this is just to point out, try it if you haven't thought of it, because black and white can be extremely powerful, and it's just a matter of opinion, color. But a lot of times, and I'm very big on black and white and what I studied and what I like the best, but color to me, as beautiful as some color images are, is the boundary. A lot of times we stop and we look at, look at the beautiful colors. We're not getting past that. When you go black and white, now the shadows, the shades of the girders of holding the ceiling up, the circles, the patterns, even the fine lines here in the roof of the structure. I mean, just look at the beautiful patterns. And yet the what really works here is that the main structure, these arches, the circular windows, this beam through the middle, really stands out even more to give us this depth of this, again, this main structure. Then we have the side arches that, again, repeating patterns is great. The repeating lines, that's fantastic. But the shadows, the shading of, look at the tones. And we've got a really good deep zone 2 down here at the bottom. And we've got some like zone 8, 7 up in here of the bright areas. Of course, the lamps are going to be blown up, but that's okay. But it's just, to me, it's creating that much more of content, of stuff to look at, to travel through. And yet, with the composition, we come right back to where you kind of want the viewer to start with. That's just my black and white spiel. I know Rick's heard it before, and he's probably tired of it, but
No, not at all. And you know what happens with this black and white conversion, it minimizes the heavy blue from the color rendition.
doesn't it? Exactly. Yeah.
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 And it's interesting to me visually, the black and white has more of a vintage quality where the color has more of a contemporary look to it. Just, how it appeals to me when I view it.
Yeah. And that's probably not a good or a bad either
No,
way,
not at
as
all.
far as judges and things like that. But I will tell you this, anytime you can take an image and make it really different than what everybody else is doing, format, structure, theme, black and white, tones, you're going to get a different, and doing it well, you're going to get a different point of view from the judges that could be in your favor. So, I mean,
Mhm.
even something like this, I don't know how this is going to work, but let's just play with the crop of maybe even picture something like, and I don't know, I'm just playing, but this is the kind of stuff I do with my images is to see how can I make, I don't know, maybe it's more of a syndrome that I have about how can I make it different than it is this a beneficial thing? But this still has the same style, the same feeling, and I didn't think I got it quite even there, but we've eliminated some of the stronger lines over here on the other side. Just a thought. But that's the kind of stuff I look at a lot of times is how can I make this uniquely different so that when it comes up, the judges they lean forward in their chair and start thinking of higher scores automatically. That's my goal. So, all right. Next we have confidence. We'll throw this right at Rick. This is his strong suit. I can get rid of the crop tool there.
Mhm. Um, First of all, oh yeah, okay.
This happens to me every time as I can't get rid of the crop tool now.
Mhm.
There we go. Okay.
Yeah, really
Sorry.
good lighting on this subject and really good use of a separation light. Obviously, with her black or dark garment against the dark background. And I think in this case, the background light or the vignette that was employed is handled really quite well, and that helps to separate the subject from the background as well. And that same kicker that is separating the subject's shoulders is spilling onto her face, which is a good thing in my opinion. Nice ratio from left to right, nice texture in the hair, with the separation light. Now, as far as the posturing, which is a term I use, I guess you could say posing. Um, might want to turn our subject a little bit more to camera left. We don't want this shoulder coming directly into the camera, but if we have her swivel just a little bit more to her right, camera left, I think we can have just a little bit more of a slimming effect. And with the hands, we have a real nice soft curve with her bottom hand. We might want to bring this hand, the top hand, from a little bit more of an angle here so that we're not going right into the knuckles, but we're seeing something on the top hand, just like we're seeing at the bottom hand, how it's graceful it looks. And then, if we do that by bringing her top hand kind of, opposite of what the bottom hand is, that'll help to camouflage that thumb that's coming out, because there's that little dark area that just, okay, I know it's a thumb, but where's it, it's where's it coming
Where
from?
they're coming from, yeah.
Yeah, but beautiful, beautiful subject. So let's see. Yeah. Um, and I mentioned turning the subject a little bit more to camera left, and then maybe um, having her turn her if we have the subject a little bit more to camera left, and then turning her head. And actually, I take that back. I call it into the light. Now we've got our light direction coming in from camera left. Okay. So we've got kind of a full facial view, because there's three classic views of the face: a front view like this is, then a two-third view, and then a profile. So this, in my opinion, is a full face view or frontal view. But if let's say that we totally do this in the opposite direction, or move the light from camera left to camera right, and then let's say we move the light to camera right and have the subject turn their head a little bit more at a angle to maybe have more of a two-third view of the face, and the main light is coming in from this direction instead. Then, we've really got something going on with the lighting, that with a two-third view of the face. Uh, Full facial views with the right cheekbone structures of subjects are really good with a butterfly type lighting.
Yeah, the only thing I maybe add to this more is, I mean, first of all, you've got a absolutely beautiful face here. The structure of the face, skin tone, your lighting is done very well. The separation from dark hair to dark background and such, besides a couple of things Rick talked about. But what happens here, I think, is as beautiful as it is, it's a little bit of a static pose because
Hmm.
the shoulder line is straight. Yeah. The shoulder line is straight. The plane of the face is straight. The body is almost straight. If the head was tipped just a hair this way, this shoulder was a little bit higher, little things like that create that movement through the pose, that S curve that we
Right.
learn about when photographing women. And it just would give and as we were talking about before, an impact. Initially, this is a very beautiful lady lighting pose, all that kind of stuff, but it stops because it ends up being a little bit static. So
Right.
it's just a little bit more of an angle of the shoulders, a little more of a tip of the head. This hand was turned this way a little bit more, like Rick said. That would force this elbow to come out a little bit more and give us a little stronger base over here. Those are the kind of things in the portraiture we grew up with, that give it a little more dynamic
Yeah.
feel. But
And
everything else going for it, the matte, the lip color, all that stuff is done well.
mhm.
So nice
And
work.
the question is merit. Uh, as it sits, and I'm looking at it, I would probably I would have it in the above average category. Um, if you have some other images in this session that might be a little bit more towards what we were talking about. I mean, the lighting is really handled quite well, but I think that's where we're going to have difficulty in the judging, as far as just what Jeff said, the static nature of the posturing. and then these other little things that we talked about.
And the hard part is, I guess, I understand your case. You guys have 78 is your merit. So getting that 77, man, I hate those 79 and the other. I hate that number because it's like almost. But these are the things that we're talking about that will take you up over that little
Yeah.
threshold there and just give us a little bit more of a dynamic feel so that it becomes a merit. I would probably score it in that 76, 77 range.
Yeah.
Um, just because again, lots of beautiful things going on, just short on a few other things that would take it over the top. All right. So next we have controlled chaos. Yeah, these are just I think I always look at this kind of stuff and I want to shake the maker's hand and applaud them for capturing this kind of action because it's so fast and so intense and and not every image along that route of this horse turning the barrel, roping a calf, whatever, is all good just because it's action. It's capturing it when there's intensity. I like that we don't even see her face, but if you look at her mouth, she's kind of got like, oh, just this really, she's concentrating on making sure this turn is clean and tight. The angle of the horse, her feet showing control of the turn. I mean, you can literally, you can't see, but she's got a grip on the reins and the saddle there. You can just tell all her muscles are tensed up to have full control of this. I like the placement. I don't even mind that. A lot of times these rodeo shots, unfortunately, there's so much going on back here, signage and people and stuff that it takes away. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
The curve of the track, even the red gives us what she's looking at and concentrating on. Even the horse is intense in its turn. So sharp, like the dust. I mean, look at the just frozen action all the way around. This is a great thing. I might have chosen a little different matte color. Again, I like to be a little more coordinating. Again, choosing a color for the matte, I would go in and use my color picker and start choosing some of the brown of the dirt and see what blends better with it, just to make it less of a thing.
Yeah. You know, one of the elements is storytelling, and boy, it sure
Yeah.
is just all of that intensity that you were talking about. So, this has a lot of potential. I'm thinking in addition to the different matte color, this is what is called weighted, in that there's more weight to the bottom of the mat than the top. And I'm not sure that all of this real estate is really adding to the image. I think if we were just to come in and have the mat about the same width all the way around, would be just a little bit more, have a little more impact. And then one other thing, we're looking at the back, the railing and what have you, and then we look at the barrel, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with bringing it back to kilter because we're dipping a little bit to the right. We see the barrel leaning in a little bit, and I'm just thinking, check it out, see if we square this up with just a little bit so that there isn't, so that it's equidistant, I guess is what I'm saying, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah, that's a good
see how,
point.
yeah.
Years ago, when we used to still enter physical prints, a lot of times the mats were done this way. There would be a weighted bottom. The top might be three-quarters of that, and the sides would be half. And so this is kind of takes that throwback. Again, it's just kind of trends. Nowadays, pretty much mats are entered and it's equal all the way around. But I will say that just because it's this way, it does bring attention to the heavier part of the mat. So
Right. And
like
maybe with a different matte color, it won't
that
be that
too.
heavy.
Yeah. And then I'm going to do what I like to do. I have to do this a few times, is just to look at what does this do in rodeo. And again, like I started out by saying, there's so much of the scenery that takes away the bright reds, the people, the banners, the signs. This one is not that bad, but even her purple shirt. But just looking at things like in black and white, and then maybe going and just dodging, lightening up her face just a little bit. All the rest of the stuff doesn't seem to take over. And now the heavier contrast and story is in her more and the horse. Again, I would just go in and just kind of lighten up her face in that just a little bit so it stands out a little bit more. I think this would be really cool in black and white, but hey, what do I know? Cosmos. I guess I was expecting a glass sitting there with a who is it? Is that Cosmos? Is that a martini? I don't know.
Cosmopolitan.
Cosmopolitan, right, right, right. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that I absolutely love. This is fantastic. The composition is very subtle, but very strong. A lot of times we see images like this where there's one or two flowers, and the flower just comes straight up from the bottom.
Right.
Not bad, but this has just enough movement to allow us to look in, and it's inviting us to follow the lines. And since there's a couple of them, this flower's a little bit in front of this one, so the back of that flower is going to be a little soft. I think that's just fine. This flower is sharp from front to back. That's fantastic. And the complementary colors of the green against the magenta, fantastic idea. The white stands out, the matte, the lip, the stroke, everything is just done so well. Um, and I'm going to do this, pose this as more of a question to you, Rick. Since we have a dark vignette in the scene, we're losing the edge of the mat with
Yep.
the image. Does that bother you? Would you rather
Yes.
stroke the edge and
Yes.
separate
And
it?
that's what I was going to address. This is one of those images where an attached key line would really help this out because just as we talked about earlier that the key line, if it has the same tonal or color value that's in the scene as it's going around the image, we lose it. The same thing is with this vignetting or dark background on the edges where it bleeds into the matte. So I would definitely recommend an attached key line, the value of which, again, that we can see all the way around the image.
Yeah, exactly. The vignette of it being dark to the green is, I think, is fantastic. It's very,
Yeah.
it shows a lot of depth, but just the fact that we're losing that, I can almost see a judge. So if this were just here, I think it would um,
Hmm.
take that question out of a judge's mind. Um, and here's another big question that I hear, especially on flowers, when you've got the pollen and things like this, and a little bit of a, and I know flowers aren't perfect, and that's fine, but in a competition, don't hesitate to take out little flaws like this guy here. You can't take out all the pollen, but maybe a couple of the bigger pieces that are showing. Again, minor things, but we're just trying to draw the eye away from it. So there's this other pieces, so don't worry about that. But if there's anything that is just going to draw the eye, I wouldn't hesitate to take those out. But gosh, the lighting on this is just phenomenal, especially the white. Look at this. You can still
Hmm.
see detail.
In detail. Yeah.
Yeah, and depth and roundness. And this is, I would score this pretty well. Um, not to go into score, but yeah, I would score this pretty well, especially with the changes we talked about. So nicely done. Oh, and the other thing that I like to say is the only thing that's wrong with this is that it
I
should
know where you're
say
going with this one.
Jeff Johnson right down here in the corner. Sorry. I like it. What can I tell you? Okay, we now have Defiance. And I'll say that honestly is a really nice, good title for this because you see this face, you see this again. It's maybe it's not fair that in competition the prettier, better looking people usually score higher, and this has kind of been the thing. It's the same with advertising and movies and so on and so forth for years. But this expression is definitely defiance or pride or a successful person here who is just saying, "Yeah, I challenge you to tell me I'm no good or I didn't do it right."
Right.
So that is an absolutely wonderful title because it paints that story. When we talked about titles earlier, um, when we see a title that basically just says what's in the picture, horses running. Okay, we know that. We can see that. The idea, of course, is the storytelling, like Rick was talking about earlier, to be able to put a title on any image that makes the judge or the viewer, however it is, if it's in a gallery or competition, makes the viewer have to go, oh yeah, I see that story. That's what Defiance did here for me. That gives it that much more of an
Yeah.
impact. What do you think, Rick?
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is a very, very well done professional um, headshot. I mean, the expression is handled very, very well. You know, the capture, the exposure, etc. In terms of a competition print image, you know, again, we want to have that impact. She has got such a beautiful face, man. I would come in really tight, and hopefully, you know, if you have another opportunity, have her turn her head um, camera left, and then come in a little stronger with just a little heavier ratio with the light camera coming in from camera left, and then having her look just a tad out of the corner of her eye, not too much to where we're seeing, you know, too much white of the eye, but just something that it would be, in my opinion, just a little bit more on the alluring side. And we do have a question too. Are titles important in competition?
Yes. Just kind of what I was saying before, and Alan, maybe you asked that while I was going through that talk before, but definitely because again, first of all, you do have to title an image. That's one of the rules.
Right.
But having just named again, that's why I was talking about this title here. If you'd have just called this Jacqueline, okay, maybe it's appropriate, maybe it's correct. Those things don't really matter. It's about conjuring up a story. It's about pulling the judges in. It's about creating a story that, I mean, think about things like, and this is what advertising is all about. Let's say we have Mama Bear, Papa Bear, and Baby Bear sitting around a table in a cabin and they've got food in front of them. I mean, what does that tell you? That gives you the whole story of the three bears because we already know this. So that's what advertising and titling is about. It's drawing on things that we kind of already know, we can quickly relate to, that make this story so much bigger because we don't have time to tell them the story. So it's little things like that that just pull in the word defiance here really I think was awesome and just by her expression by her it gave us a feeling of her personality what she might be thinking what she might be going through all those kind of things the
Yeah.
little tip that I did I just kind of tipped her backwards it just gives us just a little bit of action kind of a C curve um I think I already have the shoulders are a little bit more of an angle we've got a tip going this way, a little contrary to the body tip. So just that action, that body language just makes it, what is it, a few more points on a
Mm.
scene. But that can take you up into that merit category, or it can take you up into the 90s and maybe be one of the higher scoring images. Just little things like that. The other thing that I think is cool by the same topic is that all the years that I know Rick will agree with this one, all the years we've learned these things from all the really good professionals before us just makes your work that much better. I mean, I go back and look at my first merit print, and I don't want anybody to see it. It's horrible. I don't even know how I got a merit. Even my catalog of all the prints I had for merits is just like, wow. But I kept going and kept learning and kept going. So my imagery now is so much better. But it's because of these kind of little things, just that little tip, that little turn, it just takes you into a whole nother level, as I used to say.
Yeah. And you know, coming back to the titles, uh, the importance of titles, just a little thought is try to come up with a title that makes a judge feel we,
Whoops.
instead of making a judge think.
Right. Good call. Uh, yeah, it's definitely something that we're talking. I mean, photography is an emotion. It is a thing, and that's where you're going to get your higher scores by being able to. Um, our laugh is we don't want to make the judges think. We want to make them feel.
Right.
Because if you make us think too much, it's not going to work. We'll find stuff you don't want to hear about. All right. Forest Frolic. I love these kind of things. I've seen this kind of, I'm just going to fill up the screen here. This kind of imagery where you've got the pets running at the camera from a low angle. I just think that's so unique. I mean,
Yeah.
I grew up in a family studio and we did a lot of pet photography and never once did we think about anything in any kind of action, unless it was out on the ranch with the horses. But this stuff is just so cool. And I know it's challenging to get the, the dog to cooperate, to get the focal point, to get the exposure. But look at the great depth of field in the path. Sharpness throughout is great. The depth of field gives us motion. The action with the back paws are just about to hit the ground, or they are on the ground back here. The action of the paws up coming at us, the happy expression. I mean, this is done so very well. Number one, I'm sure the client was thrilled with it if it was a client image. So kudos to you for that stuff. A couple of things I will mention. Um, the black mat and the brown lip, while they are color coordinated with the dog, I'll give you that. The rest of the scene is more of a medium middle tone color, so it makes this black look awful stark against the green. I might look at maybe more of a brown, or maybe not this light down here, but something that's a little darker. Probably not a green, maybe a really deep gray green. Just
Hmm.
try some different things. And the black isn't bad, don't get me wrong, it's not bad. But what's happening is that I see the dog and then I go out to the mat. So
Yeah.
try something a little different. Rick, what else do you think?
Yeah, let's play around with cropping. If hopefully we have maybe more at the bottom and a little bit more to the camera right, and then if we were to crop in,
So putting the dog off center a little bit.
I'm just wanting to pull Fido out of the bullseye thing and give him a little bit more room to run into.
It also kind of makes the path behind him work a little better too,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
see, even that, I'd push her for
More
him a
direct.
little more to left,
Okay.
camera left.
We'll just bring it right up to the edge of the.
Yeah, and like I say, if there's a little bit more on the bottom, not much, and just a tad more to camera right, I think to me that's just a little stronger composition.
Before and after. Yeah, it's worth trying. This might be starting to get a little bit heavy because of this crop. If you look at before, it's because we have some balance of the darkness color here. So just keep that in mind. I think this crop is good because we have nice motion coming through here, like Rick was saying, the dog coming into the scene from left to right. Maybe, I don't know, I might take these weeds, these flowers here, and maybe don't go too light with them, but maybe take them a little bit more like in this tone, which is easy enough to do because you've got the darkest part of the scene is the dog, which draws our eye to it. And then
Yeah.
this is kind of dark, so it's pulling our eye over there, I think, unnecessarily. So if you could lighten this area, um, am I missing some questions here? Sorry, gang. Yeah, yeah, just like Faye said, that makes the path show up better. Um, so it's but again, the idea is experimenting with your
And that's really the thing, play around with it and do the side by sides. Another question, how about portrait orientation?
So if we
Uh,
brought it in like this, I think this works too. But now I like the feeling of the openness of the area. It makes it feel like the dog's out there really running.
I do too.
So I kind of like this, or maybe it could even be. But you don't always, and this is a conversation we have every show. In the PPA world, putting the subject right in the middle of the frame more times than not, I can guarantee you a judge is going to say that's a no-no. In the world of fine art, it's a yes, yes. So you kind of have to play that game. It's quite often normal to have the image right. Oops, let me go back a notch here. To have the subject right in the middle of the frame. So, but I'm just saying, don't be afraid of doing that. But maybe what happens when it's just a little bit off center is so it's a little heavier here. It makes us want to go, especially with the path. And I would even, the little stuff that I do, I'd maybe even go in there instead of maybe lightening this. Let me get my little pen since that's why I have it. Instead of lightening this, I might darken all of this, all of this area. I might darken that to pull it into these tones. Then you can lighten the path just a little more so there's more of a contrast difference between the ground here and here's this nice path that we're running on. So that stands out a little bit more. Not too much. I'm talking little bits. But then if all this background was more into the density, which is the old word we use, the darkness of this up here, this becomes a non-issue and the dog really stands out. And then the path is just a tiny bit lighter, so it really says, here's where he came from. Having this just a little bit off center gives us the direction that where he's going this way and creates that movement and that motion that Rick was talking about earlier. I don't
Mhm.
know if I know what to do, but that's what I would do. See if I'm missing questions here.
What if you crop off the other side? Which other side are we talking about?
The right side, Faye, or
Flip the crop, put the dog on the other side?
you mean flip the whole image, right?
Yeah,
We
flip it
can,
horizontal, I think is what she's asking.
well, we can sure look at that. Yeah, and you know that's kind of stuff I will do a lot in my images if I feel like it's um just not what do I want to say? Oh, oh, I hit the wrong one again because it's funny. It's like this game I'm playing, going back and forth between my camera, but it's just enough in the way that I think I got it and then I don't.
There you go. Yeah.
Just be careful of we've seen images come through competition. If there's anything in there that would give it away, like a sign, I mean, that sounds like duh.
Yeah. Telltale things.
Yeah. So if you can flip
Buttons
it,
on a
flip it.
shirt or coat.
Jeff, can you not flip it, but to crop off the other side,
Okay, is that what you're talking about? All
out of
right.
the right side?
So crop in more on this side and leave more to the left.
Yes.
Yeah. Can do any of those things. So what we might get though is and you keep in mind we've got this so if we're coming in this way more, we'll just see. So you're more like that. So he's a little just a hair off center to the right side. I think that works.
It's less work.
Just keep in mind that and this is this I think comes down to a personal thing. In our North American culture, we look from left to right. And but that is interpreted two ways. I've seen judges talk about, well, the dog's is on the right side of center, so that's awkward. He's leaving the frame now. Well, if you again play that path up a little more, like I suggested, and maybe tone down the rest of it here, you could get away with that because these all being lighter. But if you picture these areas being darker, then this path will show up more, and it will probably alleviate that. But Rick, what do you think? Because we hear both comments, both directions on that.
Right. And you know, it can be argued if it's a matter of interpretation.
Yeah.
Uh, for instance, with this composition, the dog is nearly home or nearly to its master because he or she is in the position that they are. And when we had the other crop where the dog was more in this area, then it just he or she had a little bit more distance to go to its destination. So it's really a matter of interpretation.
So, Alan, your question, you wish the dog was looking more at the camera. I'm not sure what you mean by that, as far as if the dog was more straight on and not seeing the hip back there, or the head was turned, or is that what are you referring to there?
Yeah, I mean, I love it obviously, but it personally just kind of I just wish that the dog was because it's almost like they're kind of running this way and looking at us, like their eyes are turned versus being a little bit more, they're coming more right
So
at
you
us.
are
I
you
got
saying
you.
you'd
Yeah.
rather have the dog looking at the camera rather than looking into the distance?
Yeah.
Okay. And
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
uh that's an interesting point. Um Honestly, I like the fact that the dog is looking at its destination.
Yeah, I think that
I'm gonna chime in here just a little tiny bit,
please.
because I'm the maker on this one. And This one has already been judged really high, which is kind of fun with what I
Good.
submitted. But I think the crops are better, and I've been experimenting a little bit. But there's a person in this that was removed on the left side, and the person's looking straight at me, but running in the direction of slightly toward down the path. And anyway, the original had a human being right to the
Mhm.
dog's left.
Right.
That was, and the dog's on a leash. And
Oh, okay.
I actually am going to submit the other photo as well with the person for merit image review for sure, because it's probably even stronger from what I can see. It's
Mhm.
just a bunch of experimentation. But the dog not looking straight at it, the dog was definitely going down a path,
Right. Right.
Yeah.
is my point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, can anybody hear me? Somebody said I'm hard to hear as usual.
That's better.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Oh,
Nice
thanks for the
image.
input. That's great. Yeah, beautiful work. All right, moving along here, we have this is called Frankie. Rick, what do you think?
Yeah. Um,
Who's Frankie? That's my first question.
really nice storytelling. Um, I I would have wished to see just a little bit more of a connection between the subject and the dog. Um, and we talked a minute ago about the classic views of the face, the full face, the two thirds, and then the profile. So um, in this case, we don't have a two-third view, nor do we have a profile because, we're seeing this eye kind of dropping out on the far side of the face. So, and then the nose breaking the cheek line, and then, it creates that little area of flesh underneath there that is just a tad uncomfortable. So, I would say that we either turn the subject's head a little more to camera right, so that we have more of a two-third view of the face, or to camera left, so that we have a more of a profile, and then bringing the light a little bit further from behind and into the face, because we do have nice highlights and shadows, but on the mask of the face, it's just a tad on the flat side and just a little bit chalky as well. And then, all these other little gotchas like the hand underneath here, either bringing it around behind the dog, or placing it more as if it were cupping uh, the dog's paws. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be so harsh on it, but these are things that are going to be looked at, and then little cleanup areas like the hair back here, and then presentation.
There's a spot there, some loose hairs, and again, it sounds silly, but those judges will catch that stuff. And yeah, presentation too. And then another thing too is even little things like this is where flipping the image upside down, you'll catch these things. And I know it's part of it, but this heavier texture on the background pulls my eye up to the rest of the background is, I mean, it's bold with the red and the dress. I like that a lot, but just that little bit of texture, it just pulls your eye away from what we want the judges to look at, the lines in the neck because of the hard turn. It happens, it's natural things, but those are the kind of things that you need to kind of alleviate to get the higher scores. So, gentle introductions. So again, right off the bat, wonderful title. Absolutely. I mean, it obviously says what's happening, but just those words make it inviting and soft. It makes you, and I always look at it as if I look at a title and a picture, and then I go, "Oh, that's a score right there." That's a good point.
Mhm.
Um, this is a tough one because the time of day. You've got strong, harsh sunlight. So actually, mom and baby are not too bad, but little things like this little streak of light coming through here, and then we have some highlights coming through on the horse's face, and then this harsh shadow from mom's hair. Those are little things that elevate the image up to the higher categories. Again, matte color choice, I probably would have gone with something a little softer than the black. And background, that's strong. This and the other thing too, we haven't really mentioned this. Anything that's on the edge of an image that pulls your attention is I say a bad thing. It's just tough because this probably a fence post. But because it's so much brighter and it's right on the edge, it's going to pull the viewer's attention right away. Yeah, and even the lightness of the sky. Again, minor things, but it pulls the judge, the viewer's attention away from the subject matter. Because here's your story right in here. And I mean, let's look at one more thing. Let's even go into the cropping and see if we can do something a little bit more intimate. And this is one thing I haven't, but there we go. Yeah, I was even gonna go. Because we really don't need that much of the horse's neck to tell the story. We're getting really in close to something like this. That's a lot. Whoops. Why did it not come over? Like that. That's what I was looking for right there. So now our story is nice and tight right in here. We've eliminated those other issues out there. I would darken these trees back here. Again, this shadow on the horse and this light ground back here is kind of a problem. I don't even mind the fence because it's an obvious thing. I'd hold back the eye, lighten that up a little bit, but you got this beautiful story going on right here. This is even stronger. Rick, your thoughts?
Yeah, you hit it as far as the time of day, but sometimes we have to, work with what we have. Having said that, it's we've got the sunlight coming in from camera right to the back of the gal, and I'm guessing that the horse is, this fence here is what's holding the horse on the inside of the
Right.
on the inside there. But if we're going to backlight, let's backlight all the subjects because see, we're in such deep shadow here. It's actually casting a blue hue, especially with the baby. We've got a little bit of a warm tonal value on mom, but notice how blue or cyan the babe is going. So if we have the light placing the subjects so that they're all backlit, then we would avoid this heavy shadow that's coming in, from on the horse's face. But and that's why I'm seeing a crop that's right up to the back of the gal because there's all this real estate that is it really helping to tell a story.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of saying is that you get so much in the frame that it takes away from the story you're trying to tell. And that's what we're trying to do here is to create this, especially this is a very intimate moment. This horse probably is a family, pet, family, whatever, so it's important. But all those little distractions that have pointed out are taking it away from the stories right here. And even little things too. And I know this is tough because sometimes it's just you got to shoot it when it's happening. But if you could go in and even pull the little bit of the baby carrier so we see a little more, even the eye. Again, that sounds like really sometimes you got to shoot and make it happen. But then the other question that I think is kind of an awful question, but you have to look at it and say, well, is this competition worthy or not? And that's when you start going, well, there's so many things that are kind of pulling it away from the story I want to tell that maybe it's not a competition worthy image.
Right.
And I'm not saying that this is not that, but I'm just saying that because of the few things we pointed out, it probably would score low 70s, middle
Mhm.
70s maybe, because
Yeah.
of all those little things.
And I guess too, our hope is to help someone who's considering sending a particular image into MIR. Is it something that I really should consider sending in? And as we look at this image, I'm not sure it would be a good contender for MIR.
And then you have to add the fact of the cost of doing these things
Exactly.
being expensive. But you got to learn. I mean, like I said earlier, the stuff that I've entered X number of years ago um, was I would never enter it now. This is called just hanging out. And I looked at this earlier when I got the images, and I thought, this is my kind of stuff right here. I love this because you've taken this concept of this whole bed of tulips, and if you would have photographed the whole bed, it would have been, yeah, it'd have been pretty. but to single out one little story on this little guy, I mean, here, so you have the crowd, and this guy's being like, leave me alone. I want to do my own thing. I'm just hanging out over here doing my own in my own little world. I do like that it's your shallow depth of field, so it's just through here, soft, soft darkness down here. This flower stands out against the colors, coordinating colors, the reds and the greens. The softness of these and the tightness of all those plays them down, so it's not like they're all a whole bunch more individual flowers we need to compare with. We kind of have this story of, because this one is sharp, like here's mom and here's the toddler trying to run away from the crowd. I mean, these are the kind of stories that whether that's what the maker meant or not, these are the things I'm talking about. Is if a judge looks at that and sees that kind of a story, there's points right there. Rick?
Mhm. Yeah, and you know what's interesting, and maybe we should have mentioned this earlier on. Um, Jeff and I have obviously similar backgrounds in what we do in our photography, but that doesn't mean we always totally agree, and that's a good thing because if we agreed on everything, then one of us doesn't need to be here. Um,
Right.
so
You can
my
go, Rick,
thought,
if you want.
I beg pardon?
You can go home, go to bed if you want.
Um, it is interesting with the selective focus uh, among the supporting tulips, but I see the image um, right here.
Different crop.
Oh yeah, seclude just the one tulip.
So way down in here like this.
Yeah, take all of those out because we got really nice light direction coming in from the left, and then maybe up from the bottom just a tad.
Eliminate that too.
Yeah,
But
right.
something more. And that's true. That's why they have panels of five judges, because it's an average score of five different
Right.
experienced opinions, I guess, for lack of better terminology. And I like this too. I really do. I saw the story in the other one, and that's
Hmm.
another thing too that I don't know, my personal feelings, personal opinion is that so many times, and I love selective focus. It doesn't work well in competitions. The judges want to see sharp from front to back, and you'll hear that a lot of times. Not right, not wrong, but it's just something that I've heard many times when I think purposely 2.8 was used or 1.4 something was used to tell this story. So
Hmm.
cropping it, like Rick suggested, it kind of eliminates that worry. And not always. I mean, I've got several images that I've entered and gotten merits on that were very, very shallow depth of field, and it worked. But it has to be done well so that it doesn't just become a big blob. I'm not saying this is, but sometimes we see somebody is shooting through a tree. So there's branches right here, but they're so close and big, and it's just a big blob, and it takes away from the image. So this part of the element, these elements of the image have to work to be out of focus. And I think again, this curve and the story, and that the fact that they're all the same thing, and then the one that's kind of sharp, that does work for me here.
Hmm.
And like Rick had me crop it, that works too. So you got a couple of choices there.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that whether it's a landscape or this type um, of a floral type of capture or still life, and even in some portraits, let your imagination go because a lot of times there's a photograph within the photograph.
Absolutely. Just because the camera gives you this format doesn't mean you have to stay with that. Some
Right.
people, like we were talking about that today, some people that I know, some famous photographers, only use these certain aspect ratios, 16, 9 by 16, 4 by 3, whatever. And that's fine. I like to do whatever works for the image. So don't be afraid to crop something really, really unique and odd. So I will just say this, that we are just halfway through, and I don't know if we want to take a quick break, Rick. Should we just take a quick 5 minute?
Yeah, 5 would be fine.
Our next image is entitled King on a Mossy Throne. What a face.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a dog. Makes me want to get a dog. What do you think about it, Rick?
I really like this image, and this is one of those where I think that the matte color is handled really well. You know, we've got this buff colored key line. We kind of lose it a little bit on the bottom, but placement I think has handled it very, very well. Let's see if I were to consider maybe, just a little bit of a toning down. And again, we keep saying it, nitpicking, but this is what really makes a difference. But the exposure seems to me to really be right where it needs to be. Beautiful texture in the coat of the puppy. Real nice light in the eyes and directional light. Well done.
Yeah, I think not much more I can say. I think it's very well done. Again, little things like even these little branches coming in just pull your attention over there. That's kind of minor, but it's little distractions like that. Again, when you flip the image upside down, those things will stand out more to you. This is all fine back here because it's low. One thing that I had and I don't know what the right word is. I'll say issue for lack of better words. When it first popped up, all of this is nice and it's sharp enough, but it's in the background, so I get it. But there's a hole here in the bushes, so this back here is several feet behind the subject, like the tree is. So I understand that, but it first appeared as a big out of focus area, and I'm not sure what to say about it because I think as a judge we'd look at that and go, oh yeah, that's a hole in this foliage, but let your eye catch those things because maybe you could add a little bit more of the sharper petals, fronds from the tree here to just kind of, you know, fill that up a little bit so it's not so obvious. This isn't so bad because again, this and this are the same distance away, but this works because it's a big area. This kind of jumped out at me as a, oh,
Yeah.
what's going on there? Again, minor thing. And I would even go, I mean, I'll go as far as just stuff like clean up just the little stuff in the grasses on the edge. Maybe just, put some other things in there. But for a client, I wouldn't do any of those things. This is all great. But for competitions, you do need to take that one little extra step. And and it's the kind of thing that if you look through it and you think, I wonder what a judge is going to say about that, that's enough of a exclamation point in your mind to do something about it.
Right.
If it's your image and you see it and you go, I wonder, do so. I hate to use the word fix it. I don't mean that, but change it because I can promise you, them darn judges find stuff that you don't even know is there.
That's really a good point. I wonder if, that's your gut feeling telling you
Yeah.
something. And
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Lush Green Dream. Ooh, is this cool? What do you think, sir?
this is really cool because um, we've got this beautiful green pasture, meadow, whatever you want to call it. But man, it has the feel and look to me of like dunes.
It
Uh,
does, doesn't it? Yeah.
yeah. Um, you know, my first thought was, well, I don't see a center of interest, but this is one of those images where, the whole scene
Yeah.
is the main subject. I don't know. You like to do this. Let's play with it. How about the black and white version?
A what? Oh, black and white?
Yeah.
Yeah, let me say a couple things about it. First, I see that probably the one thing that catches my eye first, because we have this really middle tone, beautiful kind of late morning, late afternoon kind of thing. I'm thinking the black matte might be just a little bit harsh, and the lip and stuff are creative, but I'm kind of pulling me away from the image. This is one of those images that I would think maybe you could even, and this I think this goes both ways. Rob, I'll have to ask you what you think too, but I've done images where I like the image so much the whole frame is the image, and all I will add is a dark key line. So in essence, I'm making the matte part of the image, and the key line will be there, but it's just kind of floating in there. This is kind of one of the areas I might do that for. So Rick, you're saying make this black and white?
Yeah, just for grins.
Okay. So now let's just kind of.
Yeah, we have to open up some area there.
So here's the option too. So if I lighten the greens, we lose our shadows, which I think kind of loses the feel. I like the shadows in this.
Mhm.
Let's go with the yellows and see if we can do something like a late afternoon or a little more harsh. Something like that, are you thinking? Or
Yeah, and maybe cropping up from the bottom just a little bit.
I might, it's what's interesting is this shadow right here kind of creates a hill feel,
Mhm.
which I like, and I'm afraid if I go and cut that off, but maybe if I bring it up like this, or even in like, so we have some of the clouds there.
And panos just have
Oh, I like
their
this
own
stuff.
charm. Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, what we're trying to convey is, the experimentation, play around with them. Just what you have on the file doesn't mean that's what you have to live with.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's definitely something to think about is when you get that format, it's not necessarily correct because that's what you shot in your camera.
Right.
Um, just trying to backpedal my crop here, but I'm not getting it right. So, anyways, so that's just some thoughts there. I was going to maybe bring the crop down so because I cropped it down below this
Yeah.
hill point, this point, I was going to maybe bring it up so we have just a little sky. Um, and play with the colors. Maybe that sky is going a little too deep. This maybe still gives it a light, airy feeling, and
Mhm.
even maybe lightening up the shadows in there that are on the hillside. Just another something more like that. Another lots of possibilities. What I was talking about this earlier. I mean, large as a lot of you know, when you darken a background sky, see the white line that's happened right there. That's natural. You're not doing anything wrong. That's what just happens. So when I darken that sky, that blue sky, let me just pull that away here. That line doesn't show up because the sky is lighter. So when I darken that, so if you decide you need to have the sky darker or the background darker, just make sure you go in and there's an easy fix for that. Because I can tell you that that right there alone will keep you out of the merit category. But
Yep.
if you look at the elements of design, there's however many there are there, depending on who you're talking to, the 12 elements of design. Sometimes we get these panels that were, oh, that's just, cute, or I love, love, love it. That's the 13th element. Anyways, in composite, what is it? The fourth element is technical excellence. So really, the other 11 are subjective by the judge, what they know, what they like, what they think is best. But technical excellence is hard, fast. It should be sharp. It should be exposed well. Technical issues, what the spots that we talk about, the dust spots, those are not going to slide by a judge. This highlight that happens because they darken the sky, I can promise you won't slide by a judge, if that makes sense.
Right.
So I'm going to say the title that I think it is Nishant. It's probably the person's name. And I'll just talk about this real quick. Titling. As important as titling is, don't go so far off in like we've seen some and it makes sense when you understand the title, oh, geez, I can't think of anything. Something that might be with the Dark Ages and the wording. It might be a subject matter, it might be a person, it might be a story that matches that theme. But if the judges don't know that, because we're not all that smart, and I'm guessing that this Nishant is probably this gentleman's name, and that's about all I can guess. But if it makes we want the judges to feel, we don't want to make them think. So I don't want you to say name it Bob, but if you're going to put a name on it, make it something that's a little more clear to us American. And then again, I'm trying to be real careful. I'm treading on a tightrope here because Nishant, that's kind of a cool name if that's what it is. But because we're not, it's not a familiar name, it makes us stop and go. So I guess that's his name. So I don't know if you know what I'm saying. And Alan says I said it right, so that's cool. But you can see what I'm saying. It's just one of those things that causes the judge to have to stop for a minute and think. The only other thing I was going to say about this, of course, we talked about no border, mat, and such would be good. Doing a portrait like this, sometimes it's a little, and I'll let Rick explain more, a little dangerous when we've got the face turned strongly to the camera left. I'm glad the nose doesn't break the cheek line as good, but the eyes are turned so much further that what I see first is the whites of the eyes, and that takes personality out of the scene. Rick, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, I'm seeing a bit, but not a whole lot of a catchlight in the eye camera, right? Yeah, just barely. But notice the size of the catchlight in the camera left eye, and then the catchlight on camera right. And this almost suggests to me that this isn't a catchlight from the main light, but some fill.
True. Yeah.
Because of the size and the fact that that the light is, coming in pretty far from camera left, but it's good modeling on the face. Um,
Yeah.
I agree with the whites of the eye. I really like the posturing, the pose. I'm kind of thinking a darker background would be nice, so we have a real nice low key, especially with his skin tone. And then, things like this, and when we do get to the point of photographing, we got to kind of smooth out the jacket or whatever because, it's a fair sized part of the image and it's commanding some attention against the gray background. But I do like the lighting pattern. I like the ratio because it's strong for a man like this and the pose itself. I don't know if we came in a little tighter. I don't know.
You mean yeah, up to so that might be interesting. Let me play with that. One thing that I think is kind of cool, and I don't remember the name of the technique, it's kind of an older lighting like a combination of a lighting technique and composition, but you've got the dark, the light,
Yes.
the dark, the light, the dark. That's very cool.
Hmm.
That's very cool. And I'm wondering, like Rick's doing, let me just play with the crop tool here and see if we can't.
Yeah, and while Jeff's working on that, is going back to titles. A lot of times it's very romantic to have a title that's a foreign language, but unless it's something really obvious that the mainstream we've heard it before, it can be challenging to a judge that doesn't know the language, and whether it's Spanish or French or whatever, it could be a challenge.
Yeah, it might be appropriate for the scene and all those kind of things, but it's just if you have again, don't make the judges think. That's not a good
Right.
point. So I mean, this is kind of radical, but let's just go way like this and look at how now we've played this. His eye gaze is kind of going up, which is a better direction. We've kind of played down that black, forget about the little black piece there. I would darken the letter,
Right.
get rid of the wrinkles here. I would tone down this hole in the pose here to get that to not be. Again, little things like this, and this can be fixed in Photoshop, is I would go and straighten out. I'd make this line of this jacket, a nice curve.
Yeah.
Like this is right here, because these little bumps, and I know they're folds, I know they're normal, but even that, use the move tool, use the bloating tool, and just straighten those out a little bit, or whatever it takes to not make them obvious. Even like this little, and this is hard because he's leaning forward, his shoulders are forward a little bit, so you're going to get these wrinkles, but that little curve is pulling attention. But look at something like that, it's just a little bit more of the hand pose is fabulous. The chin is looking up. We still have I could use the tools. We still have a bit of an angle in the shoulders. We have the head going this way. We have the gaze going this way. Again, bringing the eyes back a little bit more to center. That's pretty cool right there. That's pretty strong.
Oh yeah. I would do more of this um, to the maker. We do more of this. This really, to me, has that kind of quality of the black and whites of the golden era of Hollywood.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Yeah. Little things like too, you want to make sure don't lose detail here. This isn't so bad. That's acceptable. But in hair, you want to just make sure it's even like in here that you don't lose. We don't want this to become a big black spot. And Alan is asking, what about title? What do you think about a title on something like this, Rick? Would you go with a name or would you go something a little bit more? I mean, here's a title we used to use years ago, so it's probably going to really date me, but something like pensive or deep in thought or
Mhm.
pondering. Pondering is kind of an awkward word, but something more like that. So again, you're creating a story here,
Right.
waiting for the bus, maybe not. That kind of a direction, again creates a story a little bit deeper than because it's a beautiful portrait for the client. If you're just doing a client and delivering it I'd be really proud of it. But tweaking it a little bit more like this and giving us a little bit more thought and a little bit more
Right.
storyline is going to take the points up
Yeah.
on your score. So, and the other thing too, guys, all these images we've talked about, and we'll move on here. Don't just because the things we've said, don't just quit and give up on them. Go back and redo them, whether you either recrop them or rework them, but also maybe go back and even reshoot if you can, if you have access to the people. Shoot
Absolutely.
the theme again. Go back and try something just a little different on it. And this is just that practice line. And I'm sorry, this is my bad. I'm gonna stumble on this. Is it present faces past or present faces past? So if and again, this is one of those things that
Present.
thank you. Present faces past.
Yeah.
So, but look at the great story here, Rick.
Oh gosh, yeah. Uh, yeah. Storytelling. I really like the composition of the subject off center and supported by uh, the folks on the left. And what's interesting is there are little stories that are being told in the background. This individual that appears to me to be in a wheelchair, and matter of fact, all of them.
They're
Um,
probably all veterans, though, better, aren't they?
yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And yeah, definitely a great story. I think we could probably come in and make the mat equidistant.
That's
We
funny. I'm just thinking I like the mat. It's bold. In this case, I think it works for the more traditional uh,
Yeah.
storytelling.
And I guess visually, I'm kind of going out left and right, and I want to tighten it up a little bit to keep keep my attention inside the image. But
I
this
see.
is a powerful image.
So maybe if we were to just even suggest something like this, it keeps the eye in the image a little better.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I agree. Yeah.
And
I
that's
mean,
a
I
very
love white borders on fine art stuff. We talk about this all the time, but
right
sometimes they can definitely work against you. But maybe something like this it's more better.
or better.
Right.
This is a very, very strong image.
Yeah, I don't know what else I would suggest if you, I mean, I don't know if you've entered this and how it's done, but moving forward this in other competitions in the reportage category, this is very again, it's one of those things that it paints the story in our minds of what we know, whatever relationships we might have had with family members or friends that have been in the military, some that have lost their lives, some that have just served and risked their lives to protect, all those stories go on in our mind. But to have not just the soldier on duty, on guard, but to have probably all of them are veterans back there. That I just got goosebumps talking about that. So compliments to the maker on that one. Like this, you got 5 extra points for me on that one.
Yeah.
Quiet confidence. Ricky, right up your alley here, buddy.
Yeah. Um, you guys are gonna think I'm nuts. Um, this image, in my opinion, is very, very strong. We talked about static pose on a previous one. Um, this one might be a little static, but man, I'm looking at the expression of the gentleman. So stoic, great lighting, separation of the hair, nice little kicker, camera right. Um, you know, Sometimes less is more
Yeah.
in that we don't have a real uh how can I say it, glitzy type of a pose and background, but it's just simplicity. And we've got really good tonal range. The hands, the tonal value of the hands is just about a half a stop or three-quarters of a stop less than the face, which is just fine. Sometimes they're overlit or underlit or too burned in. I think I'm not sure that the watch is helping the story because the way the subject is dressed. Gosh, the beard. I mean, this is I think is a sleeper, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, it's good classic portraiture, and it's very strong. And like you said, it's very simple, which makes it that much more powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, the watch
Well,
it's a little bright, but that's about, I mean, I don't object to it because it works with the hands and the face is lit well. So if the watch wasn't there, if it was a little darker, sure. I don't
mhm.
mind it at all myself.
Yeah.
Nicely,
Nice. That's a really nice image.
yeah, nicely done.
It kind of reminds me of Tim and Bev Walden.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Merit, was the question. I would have it in the merit
Oh
category.
yeah, easily. Matter of fact, it's a strong merit. I mean, if we were judging with points, I mean, I'd be, I don't know, upper merit category,
Yeah.
maybe even into the low excellent category. It's just done that well. And that's as basic as you can be, but it's done that well.
Right.
All right, we now have roping to win. What's your thoughts, Ricky?
Yeah. Um, I am always impressed with the captures of these rodeo shots.
Yeah, me too.
I'm just kind of glancing over it. Um, again, depending on where we're going with it, if it's reportage or if it's illustrative, we've got obviously strong sunlight. We've got the main characters. Let's see here. Yeah, we've got the main characters that are uh, sharp and tells the story. And this is one of those we've been talking about composition off center, to the left or right or to the PowerPoints. But I think this really works well with the main subjects in the center because they're balanced by the those that are in the background.
Yeah.
If I had any suggestions, it would to see if we can't go in and maybe take the background down just a little bit. It's awfully bright, but maybe if we can work with that and get it toned down just a touch, but very nice capture.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you said there. Yeah, that was the background. That would be a tough one because you got full sunlight hitting white.
Yeah, yeah,
But this wall here is a little grayer, and this I think works. So in this area here, but this area could be just taken down. You got to be careful because when you take white and you go try to make it darker, you get this ugly gray thing.
yeah, the muddy look. Yeah,
Yeah, it looks like a cloud hanging there. So other than that, man, I don't know. I'm maybe even, and again it's reportage, but just maybe toning that area down just a hair. But wow, awesome placement. I mean, again, it's you shoot what you can when you're standing there.
yeah.
Awesome placement of the people watching. I like the movement of the subject a little bit from, excuse me, a little offset. So we're moving to the right. Yeah, very well done. This is Sunset Stroll. Yeah, this
See,
I can
I'm
see that
sorry.
this is a challenge. What's that?
No, I was just going to say this is where a title really helps the image.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because I mean, it's horse standing in pasture. Nah, that wouldn't work so much.
Right.
Horse standing around, but sunset stroll that just it paints that picture for the viewer to really enjoy it. And this is what a tough capture because you've got a lot of bright sunlight
Yeah.
and you get a horse, and a lot of times it's really reflective on some of their, especially white on the hairs and such. It can be really hard to capture and not lose the shadows. But I mean, look at the detail in the tail. Um, I don't mind these tufts of grass in the foreground being a
Mm,
little lighter because it gives us some depth. There's
right.
a little bit of darkness here. Um, again, I might question the black mat. Um, I don't know what to say. I'd maybe gone with a little bit more of a brown gray. It's maybe something in here. I'm afraid if you went with the same brown of the horse, you'd have the same feeling because it's a darkness.
Right.
This is getting awful red, but maybe something in this area here of the grasses as a matte. Again, it's what it's kind of doing then is carrying the feeling out of the picture. So almost like it's blending with it. So it's not as obvious. So the black here might be a little stark. The red, the key
You
line actually works down here and we kind of lose it in here. And it actually almost looks like it goes to red. And that's just because we have the such strong blue to the such
Yeah.
stronger golden browns here. So you might either offset that, like we
You know,
talked.
that color tone is nice. I would just detach it
Yeah,
because
yeah,
there's enough of the image that separates from the matte that it can handle that.
yeah. And I do little things like when I have a scene that, let me just enlarge this. When you've got sharp shadow lines, you can go in and use several different tools and just select that area, and it'll blur it just enough and still look realistic, but it won't be as severe. More like this transition line right here.
Yeah.
It's a gradient. So you could go in and do that right here, maybe this right here, here, this little bit. Or you could actually probably go in and get rid of that sunlight in that little spot altogether. I probably, a couple of again, these are the little things I talk about. You got a field full of these flowers. I might get rid of these four and these two right here because they're so stark against the blue that they're asking, these are fine, this is all fine, but just though that clump and these two are just saying, hey, pay attention to me, but they're
Hmm.
not telling any more to the story. Yeah, minor things like that, but good stuff. Good stuff, senor.
Good stuff, Maynard.
Then we have, oh, this is good. The Boys and the Bride. Now that's an awesome, probably in the candid, the reportage category. Look at the great story that's going on here. Realistic,
Yep.
the camaraderie, hands on each other. She's giggling. She's a happy bride and she's laughing. The composition of them all kind of leaning together is nice, comfortable feeling. Um, Even the brighter green back here, I don't object to that because it's toned down enough. The greens are a little, well, it's all a little, again, I'm just saying it's, even though it's different than we've been talking about, it all works. It's done well. Um, Maybe a little too much on the lip shadow and coloring because it is pulling my attention. I don't mind the colors so much, but maybe the shadow and the key line, just a hair asking for a little too much attention. Again, minor thing. Um, but I like it. I think it would score pretty
I
well.
do too.
Yeah.
And you were mentioning the presentation, and I think we could. I like the presentation, the matte and the sub matte. I think we've got what appears to be kind of a maroonish key line. I think we can just get rid of that.
I find a lot of times if you're going to do a like a drop shadow, like it's a cutout matte, the key line I don't think is necessary to do as,
Right.
but I also might, if that's what you're trying to do, I might, what's the word, soften that shadow line just a little bit more so it's a little bit less
Right.
obvious. Um,
That really is a cool candid capture. And
that is, it's awesome.
I,
But
I,
look at,
yeah, I think it would do well.
yeah, but technically, look at the eyes, how they sparkle, the
Yeah.
skin tone. The exposure, all that is just that's what we look for in a candidate. The hard, the tough whites that you get in her dress, great detail throughout.
Yeah.
Doesn't look like it's been fixed. Like sometimes you'll see a white that's been burned in too much. This is just done so well.
Yeah. If I had my big druthers, I would like to see the background a little bit more of a uh, selective focus.
Sure.
Just a little softer.
Something else that just caught my eye again, really minor stuff, but this is what happens. Over here on the left, you get, I don't know, those are three, is that flowers? Those three little guys in this little bright spot. Maybe even these couple of leaves and that one there. Again, it sounds like we're being real nitpicky, but that's what happens is we're looking, the judges are looking for, I don't want to use the word perfection because it's not the score of 100 is not perfect. It's just the top of that category.
Right.
But we want to get there. And if there's all these little things, you look around, there's some bright spots here, and I know they're just reflections on the leaves, but maybe if they were toned down just a tiny bit, they wouldn't pull my eye so much. Again, minor thing, but it's a couple points here and there, and that's what it's all
Right.
about. So nice work. Well worn and winding down. Now, this is a title. I like this one a lot. So look
Wow.
at the story that this tells us here. Definitely well worn. Look at the edges of the wood are worn down and weathered and winding. It tells that story. We get the spiral staircase. The white mat, fabulous choice. Again,
Yes.
I might have suggested this key line maybe be halfway instead. It's starting to give a little too much space attention, but I like what you've done. I think it's done the tones. There's detail in the blacks here, definitely detail in the highlights of the little bit of white, and it is worn. It really shows. The title tells a great story. Nice work.
Very
Anything,
nice.
anything you
Yeah.
want to add?
And I don't think we need the attached key line that we have. Uh, just bringing in the detached key line quite a bit
Oh, I see what
closer.
you're saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah,
And
yeah.
then bringing that detached in, as you mentioned, it, to
Because
me, at least halfway. Um,
it
yeah,
works. It's adding it's what it's supposed to do, but it's not asking for too much attention that way.
right.
But again, this is when I always, again, we laugh at this, and in our show, I'm always doing this, and everybody's giving me a hard time. But when I judge, one of the things that really helps me put a category and a score on an image based on what I know is if I would put my name right down here in the corner, that says I like this a lot. So I would definitely put my name on this picture right here because it's just speaking such. There's stories, the people. I mean, why is this worn? How many people have walked down here? Who has walked down here? What arguments have taken place in this darker corner of this stairway? What fingerprints can we find? What DNA? I mean, you can just keep going on with the stories, and that's what this is all about, is storytelling. So absolutely awesome job. This, again, another good story, good title. What's the column? It makes you look at it. It makes you try and figure out, okay, who was there first? It's the chicken and the egg story. Who was there first? The feet on the bag or the tag? And it doesn't matter, but it's a story that we can buy into and follow it. And the positioning, I mean, when you get somebody who's running hard and they have to stop and slide and they overslide the bag, great story. You can see the dirt
Right.
on her leg and her backside, that it was a good hard slide. They're both looking at the ump to say, okay, what do you say? What do you say? Um, so yeah, I think this is just a great story. Again, if this is going reportage, the person back here in the fence, that has to stay, should stay, and arguments there. We've got little specks, but
Yeah.
that's dust flying up from the slide. Here they are. So I mean, all just great elements of story. The shallow depth of field done very well. What else do you want to add to that?
Um, Presentation.
And presentation, yeah.
Yeah. But that's really cool, especially the expression um, of the right here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely like, okay, what do you think? I know I was safe, but what do you think?
Yeah.
Because the umpire, they never know. They weren't there. Yeah, that's just a great story. And even the awkward positioning of the legs and the even the arm, but it's a ballet. I mean, look at the movement of the
Mhm.
lines through the slide, her body, the reaching the tag, the curve of the body, the legs. I mean, it really just a really awesome capture. Good exposure, the dust flying, all those things. Nice work. Nice mat. I think this should score in the merit category.
Hmm.
That's my thoughts, and I'm sticking with them. Three more, folks. Thanks for your patience, but this is some good stuff. This one, oops, I missed the title. When athletes do headshots. Again, you're making us think. You're really tight. So that's cool. Ricky, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, good timing, right place at the right time. I'm looking into the faces and am I detecting just a little bit of graininess? Probably because of the high
Yeah, time of day,
I,
nighttime.
yeah, yeah. Um, but I think as a capture, it tells the story. There's good impact. to it. I think the composition is handled well. Lighting, obviously we're using the field lighting there.
Right.
But there's still good separation from the subject to the background. Obviously, we're going to have separation because of the light colored jersey, but there's the story right there, and then the rest
Yeah.
of it from the shoulders down supports the story. So I think it was handled quite well, but again, some kind of presentation.
Yeah, President, and this is something where you could get by. You could do a black mat, you could do a white mat. Um,
Right.
that would work. And just be careful that key line, that stroke, whatever you want to call it. Just don't make it so obvious. You might have a hard, if you did a white or a lighter gray key line, you could do it up against the image, or you could do a darker key line, a medium gray, something, and do it out in the mat just a little bit. That would work either way. I wouldn't go 2 or 3 key lines, not necessary. Um, I don't mind the grain because it is that
Hmm.
kind of time that probably was a very high ISO. I'm sorry, I'm not going to say ISO. That's just against my principles. Very high ISO. I might look at this and maybe lower the contrast just a tiny bit, only to get this dark, her hair, the back of the jersey. I know it was a probably a tough exposure, but maybe if that was just a tiny bit lighter, little bit less contrast, just play with that and see what you think. That would
Mhm.
also maybe brighten the faces up just a hair because but you can do in reportage, you can go in and do some dodging and lighten the mask of her face up just a tiniest bit, ever so slight, would pull more attention. But again, you get that nice triangle between the subjects here, the ball and their faces and the look at
Right.
these expressions, man. You talk about wanting to win that ball game there. That's cool stuff. So good work. Another great title. You guys got some good titles out there. This is called Woman in Flight. Again,
Mhm.
look at the picture that it paints. The first thing that I think the exposure is real good. This is again a tough capture, but you've done it right. So you've frozen the action just over the hurdle. This is tough because I've done sports photography and you have to be careful you don't. If this foot was a little bit out here, then all you've got is a crotch shot, and that doesn't work out too well. But this is perfect timing. I'm sensing a little bit of a green cast in the highlights, minor thing, but I think the skin tone can be adjusted just a little bit to bring it back into a little more warmth and eliminate some of the greens and the transition line. The
Right.
shadows there is okay, the highlights are okay, but it's just a little bit of a green yellow cast, and you've got bright dirt track, whatever dust, but I feel the green in the skin tone down here too. Minor thing, but and then of course we talk about matte as well. Rick, what do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah. And, in terms of balance, notice on the right side, we have this area here, and I'm just thinking maybe we can crop in from the left so that it's balanced, so that we have
Just
that.
have the hurdle and not this extra.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah,
that the
yeah.
hurdle, yeah. And that would eliminate this rectangular thing that kind of is pulling us out as well.
Yeah, that's just the hurdle from the next lane over, it looks like.
Right. Right.
And then of course I'm gonna do this. I haven't done it enough.
There you go. And I prefer this because that eliminates that issue with the color crossover.
Yeah, and look at how much quicker her face and her eyes stand out, now the intensity. And let's just play with the color, the tones a little bit more, and we can even brighten up her jersey just a bit and bring down play the shoes down and the track color a little bit more there. And again, this is the green channel, and you see there's those looks like probably sunlight spaces between trees back there. You can tone those down so they're not so obvious. Not I wouldn't go black, but maybe take them so they're there, gives us some depth, but they're not too strong.
Yeah.
Cyan is going to maybe just darken the left side of the wall and the back of the side of the stadium there a little bit more. So just little things like that. Magenta, I'm pushing the magenta up and look at what it does. Look at the lighting the sky on our uniform, when I take magenta out of it, or light magenta, look at how we now get some more lighting on the top of the jersey. Just little things like that that add. So up here
Hmm.
along the edge of the jersey, the sky, it just adds a little bit more depth and roundness to it. And now all of a sudden you have an image that her face just really stands out. And that's what happens a lot of times, like I was saying earlier, color tends to be as pretty as the color might be. sometimes it stops us from really feeling the image, and that's what we're all about. Is now we have this face, and I would even in something like this go in and do a little burning and dodging. You could do a little mask and just lighten up the mask of her face ever so slight, maybe even lighten up her eyes. She's got some dark eyes. Maybe lighten those up just ever so slight so it pulls. You know, whenever you do a portrait and you have no light in the eyes, we always refer to those as dead eyes. You've heard that term. And just getting the light in the eyes, so just manufacturing, and again, I know you can do this in the photojournalism category, to just lighten, you're just dodging as though you're doing, just lighten the darkness of her eyes ever so slight. The life you're going to have in there is going to even intensify her expression because she's concentrating. She's not going to miss a hurdle. She's going to kick everybody's butt down to the
Yeah.
finish line. And if you give her a little more life in her eyes, I promise you she'll probably win that heat.
Yeah. And in these little circles of confusion, toning them down to about the value of these here. I remember back, yeah, because back in the day, we would use actually on the print wet dyes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yep, just to tone those down. I wouldn't take them totally out.
No,
If
no,
your whole background was black, it wouldn't have the same depth feeling because you've got enough darkness back here that even that little bit of light, like I said, but if those were toned down just a hair, so they're still there like this,
right.
it wouldn't attract as much. So maybe tone it down. Minor things, but the little things like that just change the whole scope of it. And if you take it back to color, we see this hurdle over here. We see these greens, the little bit of this here, and all this stuff. It pulls you away. I think I've made the point. We'll move on. We have one more image to go. Thanks for being patient with us. This has been really fun for me, at least. I think Rick's had fun too. So
I have indeed.
our last image of the evening is called Working Man. This is up Rick's alley here. Look at this.
Yeah.
Try and get rid of the guides there. Ricky, go ahead.
Yeah,
Wrong stuff here.
I appreciate the lighting. I appreciate the low camera angle on this as well.
Yeah.
My first thought is, well, should we have a little bit more space on top and bottom? Maybe, but I don't think it's a deal killer. I think the location, we've got this guy in this gritty clothing and
Yeah, he
attire.
just got off of work, it looks like. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I guess I'm just struggling with the setting itself, where the subject is placed. I think if we had it more in a commercial or industrial environment, I
Yeah.
think the story would come through a little bit more. But again, we've got really good directional lighting. The low camera angle that I talked about, there's certainly storytelling here, but I think there's so many neat things in addition to this that could be done because we got excellent props to work with.
Right.
I'm guessing, that we're looking at a welder's helmet and gloves,
Yeah.
and then just, maybe coming in close on some of the images as well. I think we've got a little bit much of a matte. We could probably come in about halfway around, or at least a third anyway, that would be helpful to it. And then I don't know if we can't get a little more density on the highlight side of the face, but those are the things that just approached me as far as the placement of the subject in that environment. But I guess bottom line for me is having the subject in more of a commercial or industrial
Yeah,
environment.
that struck me too, is I think you got a great idea here. And because I've done this a few times myself, is you get a high school senior who's into something like this, welding or working on cars. And we've just driven into an industrial complex and find an open garage where there's maybe some sparks flying in the background from somebody else welding. And just go up there and ask somebody, hey, do you mind if we do some shots outside the door and use it? Yeah, absolutely. And then the other minor little thing too, but if you want to look like a working man, put a little dirt on his hands, put a little grease on his face, um, and just little things like that. Just take that story even further.
Yeah.
Um, I
There's
mean,
definitely potential here, in this approach. If it's something that can be, a model that you can bring back, I definitely work
right,
with.
right. That's what I was saying earlier. Don't give up on it just because we've had a couple of negative comments about it. Take those and go make something even more extraordinary with it because this is a phenom. His pose is very strong for a young man. He's a solid guy. The way he's holding the helmet, the feet spread, and the clothing, very, very good. I like the low camera angle. It's just it was more this the subject ma or the background subject that I think could be a little stronger in this one too. So
Mm.
let's see if
This
I
is
can.
the kind of environment
Yeah.
that you would see, um, you know, more of a feminine orientation, maybe a bride or even a couple.
Oh, the
That,
arch walkway here.
yeah.
Yeah. Guys, that's the last image. Man, I'm impressed. I guess I'm glad I'm not on your panel for your judging because I don't know. There's some good stuff here. I mean, maybe I would like to be because it's some good stuff. Um, any questions?
And from my point of view, I so enjoy doing these shows with Jeff. And again, from a selfish point of view, um, your work inspires me because I get ideas. Wow, hadn't thought about that or that approach or that concept. I'm gonna have to give it some consideration on some of my work down the road.
Well, how many times have we talked about? I know Rob, you and I've even talked about this several times. Is that the more we look at competitions, whether we're entering, whether we're judging, not only does it give us energy, positive feeling to go shoot some more. Man, we get a lot of great ideas from
Yeah.
looking at what you guys have done and go out and it's it is a competition, but it's not. I think I've always looked at it as I want to get those scores and those trophies and all that stuff too. But my dad always had the comment. He goes, "You're challenging yourself. You're competing against yourself. So you take a subject matter and you shoot it and you do the best that you know how at that moment. You fix it up, whatever it's in the darkroom in Photoshop, whatever, and you get the score you get, and then you look at it and say, okay." I can do it again and do it better or do it differently and get a higher score. So all I'm doing is competing against myself. Yes, it's great to get the trophies and all those things. Yes, that's great. Here's the first place trophy. Here's the Photographer of the Year trophy. Those are all fantastic. But when I take an idea and I'll challenge myself to go back out and do it better and do better on it in a competition, that to me is even more powerful because then you do that for your clients. Your clients are getting better work. You can feel better about it. I can take it and show Rick and say, "See, no." Oh,
And what's interesting too is depending on where you are in your journey, uh, for myself, I'm entering images now in our state, the type of which I hadn't entered before, and I'm actually doing worse in my competition these days
we
than I did
both are, yeah.
5 or 10 years ago, only because I wanted to be doing something
Right.
different and get out of the paradigm, so to speak, and play around with different images because um, some milestones we've reached and at that point, why continue doing the same thing and getting the same results? And I'd much rather enter an image that is completely out of my zone, so to speak,
Right.
and and it doesn't do well as opposed to something that I do all the time and know that it's gonna fare kind of well because there's no growth in that for me.
Well, we had a dear friend of ours who he doesn't live in Colorado anymore, but and he was a phenomenal photographer and did a lot of I won't even go to the category, but every year he'd enter four of the same theme over and over again. And he always won that category and always did well. But it was the same type of photograph year after year after year after year. And I'm like, okay, that's great, but it's kind of like I will give myself a topic, and I'm like, right now I'm into trying to I want to get some lone images on architectural themes. So my goal is to shoot that and see that and learn how to do better. Then when I have a few lone images on that, and again, it sounds like I don't mean to pat myself on the back, but that's my goal. Then I'm going to pick another subject and try and do something else. Let's see, Johnny, you're very welcome. Um, let's see. Is it accurate to think you thought sports reportage shots were merit image earning call? Okay, if I'm reading this right, Johnny, it's kind of he's asking if what we're saying about the images being merit quality. That's kind of why we don't go in here giving scores. We've learned this over the couple of years we've done this show, where we're not really giving scores because I actually have a dear friend of mine who's a darn fine photographer, got caught up in that. Again, I'm talking about him specifically, and this isn't a good or bad thing, but he had a couple of good scores. A judge gave him a critique that said, try this and this and this. And unfortunately, the judge did say, you're bound to get merits on this. Bad mistake on the judge's part, right, Rob? We don't supposed to say those kind of things, but
Right.
he didn't. He resubmitted them and did not get merits. And he says, that's it, I'm done. You guys don't know what you're doing. And he quit. Now, that's the extreme story, but I've heard that happen many times. So that's kind of why we've stayed away from giving you scores because you hear a number. It's kind of like when somebody gives you the one thing I remember back in the business days of when I was first working for my dad, we would tell a client, your order will be done in 4 to 6 weeks. Guess what they heard? So at 4 weeks,
4 weeks.
why is my order not done? So if we say, yeah, that's going to score an 88, and then it comes up and gets an 82, well, wait a minute. They told me it was going to be an 88. Yeah, I'm stretching it. Doesn't everybody? I mean, I'm not trying to. You're all smarter than that, right? But we don't want to paint a picture that this is my point of view. This is Rick's point of view. This is Rob's point of view. That's what we might give it. A panel of five might be do something different. Another judge might give it another higher score for different reasons. So if that helps, Johnny, that's kind of why we tend to stay away from. Yes, I'd like to say some of those rodeo images all were look pretty solid, and I probably would put them in the merit category. Again, that's all I really need to want to say right there because I don't want to get your hopes up in case I'm wrong, in case the next panel sees it differently, because that happens. Trust me, that happens. I had two images at our last state competition. I knew darn well those were 90s, and they both scored 80.
Well, Rick and Jeff, what's so great about the way you guys do this is that your comments are not only inspiring,
Good.
they're encouraging, and it reminds us that image competition is about education.
Yeah.
Right.
First and foremost, right? I mean, yeah, we like to win trophies and we like to earn degrees and all those things, but it's the education that comes with the participation. And,
Yeah.
and the way you guys frame this when you do these critique sessions it's so helpful. And we really appreciate you being willing to work with PPW this year.
That's great, Rob. We appreciate that because that's like I said, Rick and I both we were both very fortunate, and I know we both realized that we grew up in the business. If my dad didn't have an answer, and I'm not saying he had all the answers, but he was very good, he taught, and so same with Jack Avalos. They also knew where to go to find the answers for us. So I know in our conversations over the years, all we're trying to do is to provide those same opportunities to those of you who don't have a father or mother in photography or don't have those connections or whatever. We don't know it all. We do know a lot. I will say we've bumped into things almost 100 years between us. We make a lot of stuff up, just so you know that too. But yes, thank you for saying that because that's all we're trying to do is to provide a comforting service that's honest and lets you know that you're on the right track. But if you make a left turn here, that's okay. Sometimes the left turn doesn't work. You'll figure it out. But thanks for saying that, Rob, because that means a lot to what our plan here.
I think it's funny because about a year ago I ordered a critique from a competition for an image and I liked everything they said and the image merited like 81 or 80 or something like that, right? Made all the changes. I just thought it was way better. Submitted in the next competition, 78. You just never know. And I just thought it was way better. So I actually agreed with the critique, right? I mean, it made sense to me. Let me put it this way. The critique made sense to me. So I made the changes almost to the letter. And it scored worse. There's
And Jim, that's happened to all of us. It just is
it happens all the time. And it's not
Yeah.
a big deal because I just felt like the added perspective of the critique helped me see a better way to do the image.
Well, didn't
regardless
it
of the
also,
outcome.
yeah, didn't it also allow you to see, how do I say this, maybe deeper into the image, deeper into the technique, deeper into your photography than just that specific fence? Ansel Adams has a great saying, and of course I can't remember it, but I love it, where he talks about, and it's basically referring to a critique in a sense. He doesn't use that word, but we photograph to what we know, the stories we've had in our lives, the loves we've had, the movies we've seen, the books we've read. That's how we judge things. So no matter who you are, no matter if you're a seasoned juror, an educated one, we all judge based on, and again, I hate that word, but we all look at things, critique things based on what we know and what we like and dislike. The judging tries to have us balance that out so it's neutral and to deliver the message. There's still images out there that I look at and I go, I'm not talking about you guys, obviously not, but I'll walk into, and we've all done this. You walk into hotels, brand new hotels, there's all these pictures on the wall, and you go, what? Really? Not that I could do better, but really? Anyways, thank you guys. And another quick thought, if you have more questions about something that was said on the video of your image or somebody else's, email us. Please do. The email is theguys@theimagecritiqueshow.com. We're happy to send, and then please look at our site because we have a lot of services. You can, and of course, there's some cost to some of these services, but Rick and I would love to sit with you on a Zoom and do a portfolio review. We've got different levels. If you want us to look at 5 images, if you want both of us, if you want us to look at 20 images of your portfolio, that's what we're there for. Obviously, there's some different cost levels in there, but that's what we're trying to do. Same kind of thought process here is we want to help you. And again, my favorite phrase is we want you to get more better. So, Rick, what do you want to add?
Well, you guys, Rob, and all of your members that are tuned in tonight, and those that will be tuning in, hopefully, for the replay. Thank you so much for the opportunity to visit with you tonight. It was a blast, wonderful images, and I think I said a little earlier, it's a selfish point of view, but I enjoy doing this because your images inspire me. And wow, I should try something like that. And again, getting out of my paradigm and getting a little further along the journey. So I thank you all so very much for this opportunity, and I wish you very well.
Yeah, we went a little over our time frame, but who cares, right? Guys, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, guys.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you for watching the Image Critique Show with Jeff Johnson and Rick Avalos. Learn more by checking them out at theimagecritiqueshow.com.